This is gonna be a really bad storm.
I know, babe, I know. But I'll be all right, babe. I'll make sure I check in every few hours.
Okay.
But when the storm made landfall, Sean realized how wrong he'd been.
He's like, babe, this is bad.
And then, silence.
This is Sean.
I'm frantic at this point.
Got 60 to even 74 miles per hour.
This is Sean. Leave a message.
Hurricane Sandy wasn't the first storm Baltimore native Sean Rucker had to weather in his life.
When he was young, his mother passed away from cancer, and it really devastated him.
Sean wasn't bitter about her loss, though. Instead, it gave him a greater appreciation for those around him.
I think the loss of his mom at an early age increased his love for people.
He put a lot of energy into giving back to the community. That's how he redirected all of the grief.
Hung out one-on-one before.
Yeah, maybe we should do it more often.
And that became the spark that got us talking on the phone, talking outside of the group.
Soon they were dating long distance.
They made a lot of trips to visit each other.
He was genuine. What he presented to you was who he was. And it made me look at him and say, this is really a true gentleman.
And then Sean surprised Tracy by taking their relationship to the next level.
At Christmas, we drove to New York. He had planned a trip, and he's like, put on something dressy. And I saw all of my friends, everyone's dressed. And he's like, I was wondering, what are you doing for the rest of your life?
But just when it looked like Sean and Tracy had found happily ever after, fate intervened.
He was working at the airport in Maryland, and he had a very bad fall.
He had to go on disability.
But he didn't like being idle.
He wanted to be able to support his family.
He wanted to do more, and that's what led him to connect with some of his friends in New York.
They've been telling me about a program with computers.
His ultimate passion was computers and technology.
But I'd have to move to New York.
He wanted to be a graphic artist.
I think you should do it.
I said, Sean, I stand behind you.
By September of 2012, Sean had found an affordable place to live in Far Rockaway.
What's up, Sean?
Hey.
He was sharing a small apartment with two roommates, one of whom had a young son.
This was a space for Sean to stay while he was pursuing his dreams in the city.
One of the worst storms that has ever hit. It is chaos.
But now, after Hurricane Sandy has battered Far Rockaway and the rest of New York, those dreams are in doubt.
Sean's wife, Tracy, had been desperately trying to reach him.
I was messaging him on all outlets that we have.
Finally, she calls the police in New York.
911 emergency.
I want to report my husband missing. I'm really worried something happened.
She was hoping that someone would investigate and give her some answers.
But she hoped in vain.
The police were overwhelmed.
Whole neighborhoods were still flooded. There were thousands of people displaced.
There were so many calls to police reporting people missing.
About all the police could do was add Sean's name to the list.
And I'm waiting to hear anything. And the days seem like years.
It's not until November 15th, 2 weeks after the hurricane hit New York, that there's anything to report. That morning, 2 city employees are working along the water's edge.
They were cleaning up the beach.
It was under tons and tons of debris.
And as they work, one of them notices something else among the wreckage.
Hey, man, come here, come here.
This isn't just some debris.
It's a body over here. What? Bro, call somebody right now.
Wreckage handler. 32-year-old Sean Rucker moved to New York to pursue a career in graphic design.
Sean just loved New York. We would go throughout our years of dating.
And he did spend the last month living in Far Rockaway on Long Island.
But when Hurricane Sandy bludgeoned New York City, the beachfront community had borne the brunt.
The storm surge came right into and on top of Rockaway.
And now, cleanup crews have found what appears to be a man's body buried on the beach.
Hey, man, come here, come here.
When the city workers come across the body, only the hand in the back was exposed.
Bro, call somebody right now. Yes, call somebody right now.
The cleanup crew immediately called the police.
Yeah, we found the body, man. Let's send somebody as soon as possible.
When police arrive at the scene, their first thought is that another victim of the storm had washed up on the beach.
I need a corner in my location.
The waves were about 12 feet high, and so it was very possible that someone could have gotten covered up by the sand.
But when the coroner begins to remove the body, it's soon evident the hurricane hadn't killed him.
His arms were tied with what seemed to be a bed sheet.
His legs are partially encased in a garbage bag.
This wasn't just an accident.
Hey, guys.
The man had been murdered, brutally.
We need to get major crimes out here.
There's significant blunt force trauma to his head and stab wounds on the body.
And one of the victim's legs was all but severed.
For the moment, police have no idea who killed the man or when.
I need major crimes in my location. Being that it was cold weather, decomposition had slowed down quite a bit.
Hoping to uncover the dead man's name, detectives take fingerprints from the body.
The first step in a homicide is identifying the victim.
This has a positive ID.
When they ran the fingerprints, they ended up getting a hit on a Baltimore man.
His name was Sean Rucker.
Sean's wife had reported him missing.
At this point, cops realized this was the same man that they received a phone call for a few days prior.
Detectives contact Tracy Rucker to make the official notification.
Hi, this is Tracy. I have some bad news for you. I think we found Sean.
The news that Sean had been murdered took her completely by surprise.
It's like, oh my gosh, someone tried to rob him. That's what I was thinking. Because, you know, he wasn't a street person. So it would be highly easy for him to fall into the wrong group of people.
Tracy isn't sure who those people might be, but she gives the detectives a place to start.
She gave them the address where he was residing and the people that he was residing with.
One of the names that Tracy gave cops was Alicia Stewart.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
While Sean's wife struggles to process the news that her husband is dead, the detectives follow up with Alicia Stewart, the woman renting Sean a room.
When they contacted Alicia, she was shocked and she agreed to come in to answer some questions.
I just still can't believe it.
We're just trying to figure out what happened, so we appreciate you coming in to talk with us.
The detectives start by asking Alicia how she'd met Sean.
It was online. He was looking to come to New York and needed a place to stay.
Alicia says she shared the apartment with her friend Monique and Monique's 2-year-old son.
Alicia says the arrangement worked well. At first.
What's up, Sean?
Hey.
It was great having Sean. He was responsible. He helped out around the house.
But Alicia says things got more complicated when her new boyfriend, 39-year-old Thyron Aycock, moved in a week before the hurricane hit.
What do you mean complicated?
Like we were all stacked on top of each other.
It caused a lot of tension around the house.
And then the hurricane made landfall.
On top of 4 adults and a child, there's no heat, no electricity. It just made tensions even worse.
Finally, a week after the hurricane hit, the weather had cleared enough that they could safely leave the apartment.
Alicia and Monique decided, let's just get out of the house.
Took the baby to the park.
They left both Thyron and Sean in the home together.
Alicia said they spent about an hour in the park.
Hey,
Hey.
where's Sean?
When she got back, Sean was no longer there.
Do you know where he went?
I asked Thyron, but he didn't know either.
All he said was, Sean packed up all his stuff and left.
Where you going? I just gotta get out of here.
He just decided to up and leave.
Hey, detectives, this has a positive ID.
Detectives investigating the murder of 32-year-old Sean Rucker have learned that there was trouble in the tiny apartment he shared with Alicia Stewart, Monique Jeffries, and Monique's young son.
Alicia said that things became pretty tense when her new boyfriend, Thyron, moved in with them.
Thyron did not like Sean at all, and he made it very known.
And in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, Sean had disappeared from the apartment.
Yeah, me and Monique took the baby to the park. And when we got back, Sean was gone. Where's Sean?
Alicia asks Thyron what happened, and he says that all he knew was that Sean packed up his things and he was out of there.
Did you believe him?
Who, Thyron? Yeah.
She said the house was crowded. They had no electricity. It's pretty reasonable that maybe Sean just left.
One thing appears certain to detectives, though. Sean hadn't gotten far.
The beach where the police found his body was only a few blocks from the apartment.
Maybe something happened to him when he wandered out in the street. Conditions like that, people get very desperate.
Had Sean, wandering the streets alone, fallen prey to the chaos in the hurricane's aftermath?
It makes him a target.
Alicia says that she left too, not long after Sean had moved out.
The conditions in the house had become so bad, they couldn't stay there anymore.
Alicia tells investigators that her, Monique, and her son went to stay with her sister for a few days. She also says that Thyron went with them, but he only stayed for a short while.
Then, after a few days at her sister's house, Alicia and Monique got a hotel room.
Thank you for coming in.
I'll show you out.
Looking to confirm Alicia's account of Sean's disappearance, the detectives follow up with her roommate, Monique Jeffries.
She corroborates Alicia's story that they went out for a little bit, came back, and Sean was gone.
Thank you.
But what happened between Sean and Thyron in the hour they were alone together in the apartment remains a mystery.
Was there possibly more to it than Thyron had let on?
Detectives bring Thyron in for questioning.
He admits that things were tense from the start between him and Sean.
He tells detectives he just never got along with Sean, that he did not like the way that Sean would speak to Alicia, that he was rude.
That made you mad?
Yeah. I told him I didn't like him talking to my girl like that.
Did you do more than tell him?
Detectives asked Thyron if things had ever got physical between him and Sean, and he says no.
But I wish he would have started something.
Why is that?
Because I would have beat the hell out of him.
But you didn't?
No.
When they asked Tyron about the day Sean disappeared, he says he's not entirely sure what really happened. All he knows is that Sean packed up all his stuff and left.
And you didn't think that was odd?
I was just happy to see him go.
Tyron says he and the others had abandoned the apartment soon after Sean.
They all went to Alicia's sister's house to stay with her, but he didn't stay long because he and Alicia's sister do not get along.
When the detectives follow up with Alicia's sister, she confirms everyone's account of the timeline.
Hello.
Alicia, Monique, and Tyron all came to stay with her on November 7th.
She also confirms that she and Tyron didn't get along.
Why is that?
Because he was always rude to Alicia.
Always talking down on her, arguing with her about every little thing.
It was almost exactly what Tyron had said about Sean.
Alicia's sister also tells detectives that Tyron didn't just leave.
She pretty much kicked him out.
You were glad to see him go.
Yeah, that guy was trouble.
She said, I didn't feel safe with him here.
But then she says something that really grabs the detective's attention.
Alicia's sister told them she'd asked him to leave because
Rucker's murder had begun to suspect that Tyron Aycock may have had something to do with his death.
Tyron had recently moved into the apartment that Sean shared with a woman named Alicia Stewart and her friend Monique Jeffries.
From Tyron saying that he would have gotten violent with Sean if he had the opportunity, and also from Alicia's sister, who says that he threatened her. Police are starting to paint a picture about who Tyron is.
At that point, the detectives said, you know, we need to look into this.
They start by pulling his arrest record.
He had 3 felonies and 23 misdemeanors.
This is a man that had a very violent history.
He's also the last person known to have seen Sean alive.
Tyron alleged that Sean just packed up and left.
But given Tyron's violent history and his animosity towards Sean, the detectives are left wondering, was Sean alive when he left?
Tyron Aycock did not like that this other guy was around.
When the detectives receive the results of Sean's autopsy, they point to a killer with a personal motive.
Sean had been bludgeoned numerous times.
The medical examiner believed that the trauma wounds came from a hammer.
Sean had also suffered multiple stab wounds.
Whoever did this definitely wanted this man to suffer.
The autopsy also reveals that the injury to Sean's thigh occurred post-mortem.
Somebody was trying to dismember his body.
There were saw marks on the bone.
But had Tyron done the cutting? Looking for the answer, the detectives get a warrant to search Alicia's apartment.
In the apartment, detectives discover a bunch of clothing and a knife with dry blood on it.
There's also a saw that looks to have some dried blood on it.
There was no sign of a hammer, which the medical examiner believed was the murder weapon.
However, the detectives do uncover one final piece of evidence that appears connected to the crime.
Detectives find a fitted sheet that matched the sheet that was found wrapped around Sean's arms when he was discovered.
While the crime scene tech bags up the knife, saw, and other items for forensic testing, the detectives conduct a canvass of the surrounding apartments.
But because of the aftermath of the hurricane, most of the apartments were empty.
However, detectives suspect they already know 2 people who heard or saw something.
Given the brutality of the attack and the attempt to dismember the body, the detectives didn't believe Tyron had time to clean up and move the body before Alicia and Monique got back from the park.
Suspecting Alicia and Monique no more than they're admitting, detectives bring both women back in for another round of questioning.
Detectives wanted to put a little bit of pressure on them.
But even when pressed by detectives, both women insisted they don't know what happened to Sean.
The detectives suspect both women are lying, a suspicion that only deepens when they receive the forensic results from the crime lab.
Forensics confirmed that the blood that was on the knife and the saw does belong to Sean.
But they're still no closer to finding Sean's killer.
They found all this evidence, but it only proved that Sean was killed in the apartment he was living in.
Despite that, the detectives remain convinced that Thyron killed Sean.
Unfortunately, they didn't have any hardcore evidence linked to Thyron.
They weren't able to arrest him.
By the end of 2013, the case goes cold.
It's frustrating when you know who's responsible and you just can't find the evidence. But that's what being a good police officer is. You have to find it.
Sean's wife, Tracy, is just as determined to bring his killer to justice.
I was keeping things in the loop, having petitions signed, having my friends contact the police department, put pressure on them.
The effort goes nowhere until 2019.
Investigators had discovered that Thyron was in prison for an unrelated case.
He was about to get released.
So they figured they'd give a fresh look at the case.
They start by reaching out one more time to Alicia.
Being that Thyron's in jail, you kind of have leverage in terms of talking to Alicia because he can't retaliate.
She might give detectives a new story.
7 years after Sean's murder, the detectives give Alicia a call.
Hello?
I don't know if you remember me. I'm one of the detectives that worked on the murder of Sean Rucker.
She is taken by surprise that this has resurfaced.
That happened so long ago. I thought it was over with.
But then it's the detectives' turn to be taken by surprise.
Is there a time we can meet?
She tells them that she may have something they might want.
And detectives believe killed Sean and buried his body on a Long Island beach sits in prison.
He was in jail for an unrelated charge.
And he's about to be released. But have the detectives found a way to keep him behind bars?
I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm one of the detectives working the murder of Sean Rucker.
When the detectives reached out to Thyron's old girlfriend, she asked for a meeting.
I have something I want to show you.
She had something that they would be interested in.
The detectives arranged to meet Alicia the next day.
Alicia went down to the precinct and she had a brown paper bag with something in it.
You said you had something for us?
Yeah.
She pulled out this hammer.
The medical examiner suspected the killer had used a hammer to beat Sean to death.
Alicia tells investigators that this is the only hammer that was inside the house at that time.
There's something else I need to tell you.
However, the hammer isn't all that Alicia has for the investigators. She's also brought a new story.
It don't matter if you're married.
What are you talking about? I just
Sure
live here.
you're looking at.
Alicia told investigators that actually Sean and Thyron had been in an argument before her and Monique had left to go to the park.
I got tired of listening to them argue, you know?
Sure.
She just told them, look, you need to just settle this.
When you got back, Sean wasn't there.
Yeah.
Alicia maintains that she doesn't know what happened to Sean, only that Sean was gone by the time she returned.
However, detectives suspect Alicia is still holding back.
They still doubted Thyron could have cleaned up the crime scene and disposed of the body in the short time Alicia and Monique had been at the park.
And if that's just the hammer that was in the house, why didn't they find it back in 2012?
Hoping to fill the gaps in Alicia's story, the detectives reach back out to Monique Jeffries. Alicia and Sean's other roommate.
Again, she basically corroborated what Alicia had already given them.
However, she also provides a significant new detail that Alicia didn't.
She does add that when they left,
You better back up.
one man had a knife in his hand and another had a hammer.
We're gonna settle this right now.
Monique tells investigators that she really doesn't remember who had the hammer or the knife, but she does remember one thing particularly.
I'm gonna kill you.
Thyron did tell Sean that he was going to kill him.
But is it enough for an arrest?
They had to send the hammer to the lab for forensics testing. And they were able to confirm that the diameter of the hammer was consistent with Sean's wounds.
Despite that, the lab can't prove that the hammer was the murder weapon.
The lab was not able to detect any of Sean's blood or DNA on the hammer.
So the detectives bring Alicia back in and confront her about the hammer.
She swore it was legit.
And once again, Alicia gives them a new lead.
She says that they should speak to a woman named Danielle Ross.
Alicia tells investigators that Thyron admitted to Danielle that he had indeed killed Sean.
Hoping that Danielle could finally give them the break they need, detectives bring her in for an interview.
She corroborates Alicia's story and tells them that Thyron did confess to her that he killed Sean.
He also told her why.
Is to get the confession from Thyron's mouth.
And since Thyron is still in jail on the unrelated charge, there may be a way to get it.
Prison phone calls are always recorded.
And he maintained contact with Danielle.
Soon after talking to Danielle, the detectives start monitoring Thyron's calls from jail.
And sure enough, he reaches out to Danielle.
Hey, D, how you doing?
How am I doing? How do you think I'm doing?
Danielle tells him that detectives have been reaching out to her about him and it's stressing her out.
You know, makes me wonder what else you're capable of.
I'm capable of protecting the people I love.
Danielle replies to Thyron, really? Caving someone's head in with a hammer and stabbing them is protecting people?
Breaking every bone in his body?
Confronted about what he's done, Thyron doesn't exactly deny it.
He only told Danielle to stop exaggerating.
I didn't break every bone.
Thyron says that somebody must have did that after the fact.
NYPD detectives have Thyron Aycock on tape, essentially admitting that he murdered Sean Rucker 7 years earlier.
You know, makes me wonder what else you're capable of.
Thyron was in jail on an unrelated charge, and his friend Danielle had called him and let him know the police had been asking her about Sean's murder.
On the recordings, they heard him basically admit to killing Sean.
He said it was because he thought that Sean and Alicia were messing around.
I still love her, you know.
You think she still loves you?
Danielle pushes further and asks Thyron, what will happen when Alicia pushed you under the bus? And Thyron replies,
she can't.
Detectives aren't so sure. After listening to the jail calls, they bring Alicia back in for yet another round of questioning.
Daniel's comment about Alicia throwing Thyron under the bus sure sounded like she knew more about the murder than she'd admitted.
They asked Alicia over and over again, is there anything that we're missing?
I already told you everything that I know.
You sure? Monique told us that Sean and Thyron were fighting when you left the apartment.
Finally, Alicia caves to the pressure.
All right. There was a fight.
She wasn't quite sure which one had the knife and which one had the hammer, but she knew that something was going to go down.
She said when they got back from the park, she initially thought she'd been mistaken.
Where's Sean?
Thyron told her that Sean had left.
But as she soon discovered, that was a lie.
That night, Alicia and Tyron snuck into the bathroom to have sex. Because with so many people in the apartment, the bathroom was the only place with any privacy.
Wait, what's that smell? It was coming from the bathtub.
She pulled the shower curtain back and found Sean's body.
What did you do?
That got a little out of hand.
Out of hand? Out of hand?
Yeah.
You gotta get him out of here now.
She told police, I was frantic, I didn't know what to do.
So she went back to the bedroom and left Tyron to deal with the body.
Eventually, he came up with a plan.
Later that night, while Alicia was laying in bed, she did hear the sound of a saw.
But dismembering the body wouldn't work.
He was going to get rid of it another way.
Alicia says Tyron took the stroller Monique had for her son, loaded the body onto it, and wheeled it out.
Did Tyron tell you where he was taking him?
I didn't want to know. I just wanted him gone. I was scared.
Alicia also says she was afraid to tell anyone what had happened.
If Tyron was willing to kill someone in her apartment, what do you think he would have done to her?
But now, 7 years later, Alicia has finally given detectives everything they need.
With Alicia's statement and Tyron's confession, detectives executed an arrest warrant for Tyron.
He was the only one charged, though.
The district attorney granted Alicia and Danielle immunity in exchange for testimony against Tyron.
Tyron Aycock goes on trial for murder on February 3rd, 2022.
I honestly didn't think that resolution would be found in my lifetime. I never thought that I'd be sitting across from the man that took him away from me.
The prosecutors begin by explaining the tense dynamic inside Alicia's apartment in the days leading up to the murder.
The prosecutors alleged that Tyron believed that something was going on between Sean and Alicia.
And after spending several days cooped up together on account of the hurricane, things have reached a boiling point.
Yo, I want you out of here.
I was here first.
I swear I'm gonna kill you.
Look!
As the argument intensified, Alicia and Monique took her son to the park, telling Sean and Tyron things better be sorted out when they got back.
You heard her. We're gonna settle it right now.
You better back up.
The fight broke out as soon as the women left.
Evidence indicates that Tyron quickly got the upper hand.
One or two hits to the head, and Sean was on the ground.
Then Tyron grabbed the knife and finished what he'd started.
The prosecution's theory fit with the injuries Sean suffered.
Prosecutors contend that Tyron stashed Sean's body in the bathroom right after he killed him.
Alicia takes the stand and tells the jury that's where she found Sean's body later that night.
The prosecutors also had Danielle's testimony and the jail call she made with Tyron.
And when the jury returns with its verdict, there's no doubt that they believe Alicia and Danielle are telling the truth.
They find him guilty of second-degree murder.
Tyron is sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
I would have wanted more, but I was grateful that Sean could receive some sort of justice.
At least now they have closure. They know that the person who murdered Sean Rucker is now in jail.
But even justice can't bring back a loving husband who, like so many others, followed his dream to New York City.
They could have a real future together.
a happy family and have a happy ending.
Love can be a dangerous game. When someone is dishonest, when they toy with your emotions, desperation can sink in. And you'll do anything to anyone to keep that love of the world. The beginning of a whole new type of love. One that's pure, one that's true, one that's full of possibilities for you and your partner. But what if finding that love meant taking it away from someone else? What lines would you cross? What bonds would you break? For a love so strong, so perfect, it couldn't possibly be real. January 13th, 2017. It's 4 a.m. in Walterboro, a town of 5,000 people perched on the edge of the South Carolina Lowcountry.
It's a little small community, very tight-knit. Everybody knows everybody.
It was almost tucked away from any sort of outward problems and some of the issues that affect bigger cities.
That is, until one neighborhood in this quiet community is awakened unexpectedly by a slew of flashing lights as police descend on a modest home on Lemax Street.
You saw all these police cars come up like they were going in there to get Jack the Ripper or somebody.
Police were surrounding this tidy little white house that had what everyone thought was a picture-perfect family.
And you knew that somebody had did something wrong.
The home belongs to 51-year-old Gloria Williams. What's brought police to Gloria's home? And what will they find inside?
It was quite shocking. She was your average soccer mom, active in the community and in her church.
People were saying, how could this happen?
I was just amazed, shocked, heartbroken, everything all at once.
Kind and God-fearing, 51-year-old working mother Gloria Williams was well respected in her hometown of Walterboro.
Gloria had been working at a nursing home. She really cared for the elderly.
She was an upstanding citizen, nice young lady. Gloria was willing to stop, talk to you, give you a good word, you know.
She thrives on church every Sunday and Bible study every Wednesday.
This faith-driven life fostered this great environment for her family.
Relationship that started some 20 years earlier.
Need for that unconditional love.
Gloria's desire to be loved and accepted was so strong that she jumped headfirst into the relationship.
Though Charles had a bit of a checkered past, Gloria didn't let it stand in the way of her feelings for him.
Charles did have some minor run-ins with the law. It was hard for him to find someone that would accept him for who he was.
She took a liking to Charles. She saw some potential in him, and despite his background, she was willing to make him a part of her family.
The couple soon moved in together. Gloria felt she'd finally found her soulmate.
Charles came in and offered Gloria love, the acceptance, everything that she was looking for.
She loved Charles. Charles loved her.
But like so many relationships that burn red hot from the beginning, the flames of passion proved fleeting. After less than a year together, Gloria and Charles discovered living under the same roof was often easier said than done.
Things were quickly going south in Gloria and Charles' relationship. Constant fighting and fussing between her and Charles.
Things got tough in the house, perhaps even toxic.
Nevertheless, Gloria was determined to make the relationship work.
She had felt very much like she had already failed once, and she was going to stick this one out. She was going to do whatever she had to do.
She said, you know, it didn't matter. I still love you.
In December of 1997, Gloria received some exciting news. news she hoped would save the relationship.
Gloria actually gets pregnant. This is everything that Gloria was longing for.
The couple found out they were having a baby girl and decided on the name Alexis. As they prepared for Alexis's arrival, Gloria and Charles discovered their love for one another was still strong.
She got pregnant and immediately things changed. They were spending a lot of time together. There was no longer talk of breaking up. It made things comfortable. It made things peaceful.
However, several months into the pregnancy, disaster struck when Charles was arrested for larceny.
Gloria was in shock.
Although he had run into some issues with the law in the past, she thought Charles wanted to change his life.
Even after the arrest, Gloria believed she and Charles had turned a corner, and that once baby Alexis arrived and Charles was released, their life would be back on track.
When you bring a baby girl home to a man, he has a more deeper thought of responsibility.
This baby became the hope for Gloria to mend all the broken pieces.
But little did Gloria know that her desire to keep her family together would set off a catastrophic string of events, one that would play out in slow motion before finally coming to a head some 2 decades later. Fast forward once more to January 13th, 2017. It's 4 a.m., and police in Walterboro, South Carolina, have just entered Gloria Williams' home, hoping to solve a nearly 20-year-old mystery. The home is quiet, and police find no obvious signs of any wrongdoing.
There was pictures of her daughter, her being dolled up in her little outfits, her frilly shoes and the socks, and they seemed happy.
This, for all intents and purposes, is looking like a very normal life.
Then, in a back bedroom, police locate Gloria.
Police, with warrant in hand, find her asleep in bed.
Officers ask her where they might find her 18-year-old daughter, Alexis. Gloria tells police that Alexis is sleeping over at a friend's house. At that point, the officers place Gloria in handcuffs and inform her that she's under arrest. To their surprise, Gloria says she's been expecting them for a very, very long time.
Gloria was saying she was nervous. She was waiting for someone to show up at the door to say, "You're under arrest."
But what secret crime has Gloria been covering up? And for how long? Soon, investigators will unravel a web of lies, one that will leave everyone that knows Gloria Williams in utter disbelief.
The community up there was just as shocked as anybody else when this whole story broke.
Gloria would have done anything to keep Charles. She wasn't a loser.
Police in Walterboro, South Carolina, have just arrested 51-year-old nursing assistant Gloria Williams. Patrol officers transport Gloria to headquarters, and as morning dawns on Walterboro, detectives inform her of the charges against her.
We secured the warrant last night, and the charges will be kidnapping and interference with custody.
It was a kidnapping, for goodness sake.
How did this church-going mother get wrapped up in a kidnapping case?
You can't picture this woman who is the church lady being a kidnapper.
No one could say a bad thing about Gloria. She was educated, caring, mother and neighbor and friend. It floored everyone.
Gloria may not look like a kidnapper, but police are confident they have the right person in custody. They explain that investigators have come all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, to speak with her. After receiving an unusual tip,
This tipster advises that her friend has told her that she was kidnapped from Jacksonville, Florida as a child. She further advised that her friend's name was Alexis and that she lived in Walterboro, South Carolina.
after receiving the tip, Jacksonville investigators searched birth records in Walterboro and discovered that Alexis was allegedly born to Gloria Williams and Charles Walker on July 10, 1998. However, A closer look at Alexis's birth certificate suggests it's a forgery.
They were able to see forged birth certificates were used as a means of claiming that Alexis was born in South Carolina.
Detectives explained to Gloria that they also learned on the same day Alexis was born back in 1998, a newborn baby named Kamaya Mobley was reportedly stolen from a Florida hospital.
When they look into it, the age was perfect, and they said this might be a legitimate tip.
Police tell Gloria that after they received this information, officers from both departments met with the tipster at police headquarters in Walterboro. They recorded a video interview of the young woman, who identifies herself as a friend of Alexis's, named Brittany Mitchell.
It's my understanding that you have knowledge about an abduction from a Jacksonville hospital about 18 years ago. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Detectives explain that during the interview with Brittany, she said that on Alexis's 16th birthday back in 2014, she tried to apply for work at a local restaurant.
Alexis, she was looking for a job, and so she applied for a job at Shoney's.
According to Brittany, the application required Alexis to provide her social security number. Alexis didn't know it by heart, so she did what any child would do and asked her mother for it.
Gloria Williams at that point said, I have to tell you something. She said, you don't have a social security number. 16 years ago, I walked into a hospital in Jacksonville and stole you.
Gloria had to sit down and tell her something that she'd been holding inside for 16 years. And she took a phone and pulled up an image of the flyer of a missing baby, flyers that had been displayed all over Jacksonville in 1998.
Brittany said that initially, Alexis had no idea what to make of her mom's story.
It was kind of hard for her to conceptualize that she was kidnapped. For Alexis, this was not real.
But Brittany told investigators that when Alexis did a little research, she was shocked to discover much of what her mother said seemed to be true.
She went on her phone and brought it up online, the Kamaya Mobley story or whatever. And then when I seen the abductor, I was like, that looked just like Miss Gloria.
This kidnapping was definitely in the news. You heard about it in the newspaper. It was very widespread. It was definitely a talk of the town.
This was a story that everyone in Jacksonville knew about. The little girl was kidnapped at just 8 hours old.
Now, after presenting Gloria with Brittany Mitchell's statement, as well as the evidence of the fraudulent birth certificate, investigators ask her point blank, did she kidnap Kamaya all those years ago? And if so, why?
Detectives are hopeful that Gloria is going to share some additional information.
But Gloria, it appears, has nothing to say.
In her mind, she was thinking that this was gonna fix the situation. She didn't think about the snowball effect that it was gonna cause in regards to everybody in her life.
On kidnapping charges, shocking the small town of Walterboro, South Carolina, to its core.
Gloria had been arrested for kidnapping this young girl out of the hospital in Florida over 18 years ago.
As unbelievable as the story sounds, detectives have a sworn statement from a friend of Gloria's daughter that implicates her in the crime, as well as evidence that suggests Alexis's birth certificate is a forgery.
Detectives knew that they'd gone from credible lead to potential suspect in the abduction of Kamaya Mobley.
If investigators want to make the charges against Gloria stick, they're going to need answers to a couple of questions. A, what was Gloria's motive for committing the crime? And B, was the man who raised Alexis as his daughter, Charles Walker, in on the kidnapping? But if police are expecting Gloria to provide them with the answers, they're sorely mistaken.
Gloria exercises her rights and chooses not to speak to them.
In an effort to get Gloria to open up, Detectives paint for her a picture of the events on July 10, 1998, and the horrific toll Gloria's alleged actions took on one young, first-time mother. It started around 3 p.m.
We heard some chatter over the scanner telling us that there had been a kidnapping, and it was at University Medical Center.
Police arrived to find 16-year-old Shannara Mobley outside her hospital room in a state of panic and confusion.
Shannara is struggling, going down the hospital hallway, screaming.
She was just screaming, "Where's my baby? I want my baby." You could hear the sadness, the anger in this young lady's voice.
Police raced to secure the exits.
The first thing was to seal off the area in hopes that we had the person contained within the hospital.
Unfortunately, it was too little too late.
By the time law enforcement got there, the woman and child were gone.
In search of answers, Jacksonville police interviewed Shannara. She tearfully explained that her baby girl was named Kamaya, and that unfortunately, the baby's father couldn't be there for the birth.
I was in jail at that time. They say, "Your daughter was born Kamaya Mobley," and I was so happy. Until they told me my daughter has been kidnapped.
Shannara told police that 8 hours after giving birth, a woman she assumed was a nurse entered her room.
The nurse had taken particular interest in 16-year-old Shannara's pregnancy and the birth of her child.
When the woman suggested that baby Kamaya needed her temperature taken, Shannara handed over the infant without hesitation. But as the woman left the room, Shannara noticed something strange.
Shannara noticed as she walking out that she had a purse on her arm. They're not supposed to be working with no purse on their arm.
According to Shannara, neither the woman nor baby Kamaya ever returned. At this point, detectives pause and ask Gloria if she has anything to say. She remains silent, so detectives pick up where they left off. According to the incident report, after speaking with Shannara, Jacksonville detectives reviewed hospital surveillance video. The footage, along with several eyewitness accounts, placed a woman with a purse exiting the hospital around 2:57 p.m.
I seen this lady. She had a smock with flowers, and she came right, past me.
They see her walking through the halls, carrying a large purse. This nurse just walked right out of the hospital with that baby.
Police believe baby Kamaya was inside the purse.
We realized that the baby was gone. Now it was a question of getting it out publicly and having the public also assist us in trying to find Kamaya.
On the evening of July 10th, 1998, Jacksonville police released a sketch of the woman, and the entire city went on high alert.
It became one of the biggest manhunts that we've had in this city.
Joining in the search efforts was Craig Aiken, baby Kamaya's father, who was out of jail and armed with a new mission in life.
Every day went by, I thought they was gonna find her the next day. But I had to keep my sanity because I had to find my daughter. I could not lose my mind.
But it was an impassioned plea from Kamaya's mother, Shannara, that broke the hearts of everyone in Jacksonville.
Please, man, my baby. I mean, how you think I feel? I'm only true enough. I'm only 16 years old, but that's my first child.
Over the next several weeks, hundreds of tips poured in, but they all proved to be dead ends.
As time went on, the trail got colder and colder.
Detectives explained to Gloria Williams that over the next several years, while she and Charles celebrated every July 10th with a party for the daughter they called Alexis, Kamaya's real parents marked those days with a far more heartbreaking tradition.
On July 10th every year, Shannara would get a birthday cake. And she'd cut a slice for herself, and she'd cut a slice for her little girl. And she'd wrap it in cellophane and put it in the freezer.
Detectives ask Gloria once again if she is ready to explain what happened that day in 1998 and why.
For Gloria Williams, it got to be a hard thing to keep for 18 years, to keep it to yourself like that.
When the true motive behind the kidnapping comes out, investigators realize there's a whole other layer to the case. And that Gloria's dream of having a baby girl of her own may well have been trumped by her desire to keep her man by her side.
This wasn't haphazard, this wasn't random, this was a deliberate, premeditated effort to steal a child.
Gloria Williams has just been arrested for the 1998 kidnapping of a baby named Kamaya Mobley, who, they allege, Gloria has raised for the last 18 years under the name Alexis. Those who know Gloria are shocked by the allegations.
This was a major shock. I'm sure some were thinking that Kamaya was gone, totally gone, whether dead or just literally into her own life somewhere else.
I'm sure that people were kind of taken back. I think everybody was assuming that that was her child. She raised her as her child.
Since being taken into custody, Gloria hasn't said one word about the charges levied against her. But after hearing the gut-wrenching details of the initial police report, Gloria finally decides to break her silence.
It really had to eat it. Gloria Williams for 18 years. The secret that she was keeping.
I think she was waiting for this day. It was just a matter of time that the police were going to come knocking.
Gloria begins her statement by explaining that in 1998, while she was several months pregnant, her boyfriend, Charles Walker, had landed himself in jail on a larceny charge. Despite his arrest, Gloria was hopeful that the impending birth of baby Alexis would compel Charles to put his bad boy behavior behind him once and for all.
Gloria advised that she felt that a new baby would straighten Charles up.
She thought that having a baby would save the relationship.
However, Gloria tells police her hopes for a better future were dashed in the blink of an eye when she suffered a miscarriage.
She went to get an ultrasound that they had said the baby's had stopped developing, it's gone.
Having a miscarriage was a tremendous loss for her. She had just a lot of emotional pain and loneliness.
Adding to the pain, Gloria was afraid that if Charles found out about the miscarriage, he would end their relationship.
She's not going to allow that miscarriage to be the cause of losing her man.
I don't believe Gloria told anyone. I don't believe she even wanted to believe that she had had a miscarriage.
Gloria explains that on the night of July 9th, 1998, her emotions came to a head. All alone, grieving her lost daughter, and fearful of the toll the miscarriage would take on her relationship, she began scheming of ways to have the baby and the man she'd always dreamed of, no matter the cost.
When somebody is broken and desperate, they'll do anything. Absolutely anything.
Everything just started spiraling out of control.
Gloria says that the next day, she found herself heading south to Jacksonville, Florida, to do the unthinkable.
Gloria stole the child for Charles out of that desperate need for that relationship.
He was everything that she could possibly have wanted, and she thought that she can have that once again.
Detectives are stunned. How did Gloria keep her crime under wraps all these years? And more importantly, did she ever divulge her secret to Charles, thus making him her co-conspirator? Or did Gloria actively keep Charles in the dark in order to keep him by her side?
Charles didn't understand the depth of the damage that Gloria Williams was inflicting for him and for the relationship. Ultimately, there's no happy ending.
Gloria Williams has admitted to stealing less than one-day-old baby Kamaya Mobley from a Jacksonville, Florida hospital back in 1998. According to Gloria, it was all part of a desperate attempt to mend the broken relationship with her live-in boyfriend, Charles Walker.
Gloria was in a very unhealthy state. She had a miscarriage. Her current relationship is in a state of failure. So in her mind, when you have that many losses compounded with no support at all, she made such a terrible decision to go and kidnap a baby.
According to Gloria, her plan worked, at least at first. 2 weeks after she brought the baby home, Charles was released from jail.
Charles stated that upon seeing that little girl, it was just more motivation for him to change his life. And Gloria was happy as well. She'd accomplished her mission.
Gloria tells detectives that while Charles was clearly a changed man after the arrival of baby Alexis, the relationship had bigger problems than a newborn could fix.
Charles loved her as his own, thought that, this is my baby girl. But in regards to Gloria, there's a lot of things missing in their relationship.
They couldn't make it, so they broke up.
Gloria has one of those feelings of, your world is shaken, and then all of a sudden your dream comes true, and whoa, hold on, it's gonna end.
According to Gloria, Charles never knew the truth about his daughter. No one did.
Charles played child support for 18 years for a daughter that he believed was his.
This illusion became her reality. So she led this perfect life and fostered this great environment for Alexis.
Gloria says that the truth of what she'd done weighed more heavily on her with each passing year. Finally, when Alexis turned 16 and wanted to get a job, Gloria cracked.
Alexis didn't really exist. Her real name was Kamaya Mobley.
Gloria assumed that once Alexis knew the truth, she'd never forgive her. But that wasn't the case.
Alexis said, it didn't matter. You're still my mom. I still love you.
For the next 2 years, Gloria and Alexis continued living the lie.
That secret stayed between the two of them.
Charles had no idea that his daughter wasn't his daughter.
It's a shocking story, one like nothing detectives have ever heard before. But in order to prove it's 100% true, investigators need to compare DNA samples of 18-year-old Alexis against those on file from baby Kamaya. Within the hour, Alexis arrives at the station.
Alexis here. Of course, she's a little loud out there. I'm gonna let her come in, let you talk to her, make sure she's okay.
Police allowed them to have this special time together to say their goodbyes.
It's okay. It's okay. I love you so much. It's okay. What do you have to do? It's okay. What do you want to do? I'm trying to be strong for you. I'm trying to worry about me. Okay?
When they were hugging each other and crying, it was heartbreaking.
At Gloria's urging, Alexis supplies investigators with a sample of her DNA. They compare the swabs to the original sample from baby Kamaya.
So DNA results indicated that Alexis was indeed Kamaya Mobley.
Nearly 2 decades later, police have found Shanara Mobley's missing daughter. As for Gloria Williams, she's charged with kidnapping and interference with child custody, a first-degree felony that carries the possibility of a life sentence in Florida.
In South Carolina, she was the church lady, but that's not how we knew her in Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, Gloria Williams was a monster because we knew what she did.
Every day that Gloria Williams had Kamaya Mobley, she continued to commit that kidnapping.
With Gloria formally indicted, detectives need to speak with Charles Walker.
The police believe Charles was not involved in any way, shape, or form.
Within moments of getting him on the phone, it's clear that's indeed the case.
Charles was shocked. He was involved in a crime he had nothing to do with. Here, this baby who triggered a change in him turns out not to be his baby. So he's going through all types of emotional feelings.
Back in Jacksonville, Kamaya's biological parents get the call of a lifetime.
We get this call from the state attorney from out of nowhere, and they was like, "We found your daughter."
Craig Aiken and Shannara Mobley make the 3-hour drive from Jacksonville to Walterboro to meet their daughter.
It was beautiful, man. Seeing her for the first time. She looked like sunshine, man. It was just, that was one of the happiest moments of my life.
It's an overwhelming moment for the young woman, who now has 2 identities and 2 families.
She was in a life of deception. She was living a lie. She was happy with that lie, you know, until she found out the truth.
At her initial arraignment, Gloria pleads guilty to felony kidnapping, sparing everyone the ordeal of a criminal trial. Now it will be up to a judge to determine her fate. Will the pain she inflicted on Shannara and Craig earn her the maximum penalty? Or will 18 years as a loving mother to Alexis earn her some leniency?
It's a bad crime, but when you look at the sum of the whole thing, the girl was well raised.
The defense was trying to show that this little girl had a great life. It offended Shannara Mobley and Craig. This family was robbed of everything.
I don't see no church lady, no mama, no friend down the street. I look at it as a kid now.
It's only one sentence, and I don't think she's open up for that. I would say death.
Gloria Williams' sentencing hearing begins inside a packed courtroom in Jacksonville, Florida. Gloria has pled guilty to kidnapping infant Kamaya Mobley and raising her as her own daughter named Alexis for 18 years.
Gloria, she raised a great little girl. Boy, did she destroy lives doing it.
Charles Walker, the man who believed Kamaya was his biological daughter for 18 years, is also present at the hearing. His heartbreak is palpable.
Once he found out that this wasn't his daughter, there's a sense of loss there. So, you know, he's like, where do I go from here?
When Gloria takes the stand, she begins by explaining what happened on July 9th, 1998, the night before she kidnapped baby Kamaya.
Gloria miscarries. She sets off on a mission. Despite losing her own, she's going to have a baby. When Charles gets out of jail, there will be a baby waiting on him. He expects it.
She said she actually got on Interstate 95 and just started driving south.
Gloria says she crossed the Florida state line into Jacksonville around 10 o'clock on the morning of July 10th.
She claims that she just drove to this hospital randomly.
She really doesn't know how she was going to get a baby.
Gloria entered the hospital dressed in her nurse's assistant uniform.
She's wearing a floral scrub type top that you would see if you went into any hospital.
Gloria says she stalked the maternity ward, unsure of her next steps. That's when she found 16-year-old Shannara Mobley holding newborn baby Kamaya.
She says that she sat there and talked with Shannara.
Gloria admits that she took Kamaya from her mother under the guise of needing to take the child's temperature. Instead, she stashed baby Kamaya in her purse and left the hospital.
There's only one reason that she wanted to have that baby, to save the relationship with her boyfriend.
I was thinking about, you know,
maybe this baby can help Charles. Thought it would bring peace to the family.
Having kept her miscarriage a secret, Gloria says no one missed a beat when she showed up the next day with a newborn baby.
Ms. Williams was able to convince people that she was pregnant and gave birth. The people that are closest to her, all of those people were fooled.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about all of this. I'm not a bad person.
Well, it bothered me because she pretended that she was her mother all these years. She took that away from us.
I did a wrong thing. I did. If I could do it all over again, no, I wouldn't do it.
Gloria's testimony is powerful. But the victim's impact statement from Shanara Mobley, Kamaya's biological mother, demonstrates the acute pain Gloria's actions have caused.
She wouldn't have went into a grown woman's room and done that.
Okay, you're saying because you were so young.
Yeah, because I was young and she came in there and prayed on the child, and that's what she's doing to my child.
Yes.
I am your mother, Kamaya.
Shanara tells the courtroom that only one sentence is fitting for the woman who stole her baby.
It's only one sentence, and I don't think she's open up for that. I would say death.
After hearing both Gloria and Shanara, the judge sentences Gloria Williams to 18 years for felony kidnapping and interference with custody.
It's certain things in this life we should be punished for, and that's one of them.
Once Gloria is carted off to prison, another question presents itself. Where will Kamaya, now 19 years old, choose to live? And will she go by her birth name or the name given to her by the woman who kidnapped her?
She's over 18. It's her choice. She's a victim in this.
Kamaya decides to go by the name Alexis Walker and continues living in South Carolina, next to the friends and neighbors she's known all her life. However, she also chooses to stay in contact with her biological family in Florida.
We're just trying to build a relationship. I helped her get her first car. We're doing a lot of first time everything. It's a blessing to have her back.
To the surprise of many, Kamaya continues to maintain a relationship with Gloria.
She and Gloria exchanged letters, and she loves this woman. She loves her abductor.
As for Gloria, she'll have 18 years to think about what she did and the lives she ruined, all in an effort to make her man straighten up, fly right, and love her forever.
She wanted Charles to love her again. Gloria had her baby, and in doing so, she had her man.
Even though in the back of her mind, she knew that this was something that was wrong, Gloria would do anything to be able to make Charles happy, to be able to satisfy his needs, whatever it takes.
They say a mother's love for a child is the strongest thing on earth. But love for a man, that can be far more fragile. And if that love is built on one lie, one monumental secret, it can come crashing down in an instant. And the love that you thought.
She gave her heart to a man who promised her the world.
He was very nice, very charming.
He made her feel special. She's having all these butterflies. Everything's amazing.
But their fairy tale romance will be cut short.
She was shot in the head.
They found blood all over inside the car.
Was it a robbery gone wrong?
Her cell phone and her purse were missing.
This was looking more and more like a random crime.
Or was it personal?
She had met a woman that she was in love with.
She was starting to explore her sexuality.
The investigation will turn up a number of suspects.
It was an overwhelming case.
Things really started to go downhill.
And before the dust settles, another life may be lost.
We don't want to believe that the depravity that happened in this case
was possible.
That Jekyll and Hyde type of personality.
It was love that killed her, in a way.
January 22nd, 2017. It's a peaceful Sunday in Yonkers, New York, a suburban gateway between New York City and the Hudson Valley.
Yonkers is a city of about 200,000 people, just north of New York City.
We're sometimes affectionately known as the sixth borough.
Yonkers area can be a little more urban. It's a melting pot, but it is genuinely a really nice place to live.
However, this morning, Yonkers resident Leonida Perez Casado is up nervously pacing her apartment.
She had woke up around 7 and noticed her daughter wasn't home.
Hey, you reached Diana. Leave a message.
Diana, it's your mother. Where are you?
Mom's calling Diana, not getting her on the phone.
Diana was 27. She was an adult, but this type of behavior was out of the norm for her.
Her mother got very nervous.
But Leonida feels a wave of relief wash over her when she sees Diana's car in the parking lot.
She goes to the parking lot and she spots her daughter.
She sees Diana hunched over and she thought, oh my God, look at this girl. I'm gonna kill her. I can't believe she fell asleep in the car.
Diana? What are you doing out here?
But Diana isn't sleeping.
She felt something wet, and when she looked at her hand, it was blood.
She immediately calls 911.
Please, somebody help me.
Diana Casado had always been the heart of her family.
She was kind of like the glue, you know, the one that kept them all together.
Diana's father, her mother, her brother, they all said she brightened up a room. She was a lovely girl, very friendly, always would lend a helping hand, whether she knew you or didn't know you.
But Diana had an especially strong bond with her mother.
Her mother and her were very tight.
She did everything with her, went to the salon, got their nails done, went to eat.
Her mom had just always really been her best friend.
And Leonida couldn't have been more proud of her daughter.
Diana, along with her whole family, originally immigrated from the Dominican Republic.
She came when she was around 16, 17.
For a lot of kids, that would have thrown them for a loop at that age, but Diana adjusted really well, and her parents were so proud of her.
In her new home, Diana had no trouble fitting in.
Yonkers has a high immigrant population. A lot of the population are Latino.
Her friends loved her. They said she was outgoing, she was fun.
She also had the discipline to work hard.
Diana had gotten a job at a restaurant near where they were living.
In fact, her mother worked at the same restaurant that she did.
She had a small circle of friends who also worked at the same restaurant. And that was her little family.
But as a young woman, Diana had more on her mind than hard work.
Diana was like a free spirit. She wanted to have fun.
So it was no wonder when she caught the eye of a handsome older man named Luis Alteret Rivera.
She was his waitress, and the two quickly hit it off.
Hey, I'm Diana.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing better now. How are you?
He was a good-looking man.
He started talking to her.
He was being very nice, open and friendly.
He said, you know, would you like to get together?
I would love to take you out sometime.
How's Friday?
They exchanged numbers, and they ended up going on a date that same week.
Even though Luis was almost 15 years older than Diana, they had an immediate connection.
That age gap really was exciting for her.
He had a good career as a civilian working on a military base.
He has all of this extra life experience.
And he always made Diana feel special.
She thought he was the sweetest guy in the world.
He's taking her out to places she's never been to, for date nights. He made her think he can give her the world.
And it wasn't long before the pair became an item.
He thought he loved her.
She was head over heels in love with him. And seemed like this was the one.
But in the spring of 2016, after spending nearly a decade together, 27-year-old Diana was yearning for a change.
You have to remember, she was a kid when she met Luis. She didn't really know who she was.
She reached a point in her life where she thought, I don't know if this is really what I want forever because I really haven't experienced anything else.
So she decided to make a fresh start.
She wanted to start over, do something different. So she took a vacation with her sister down to Miami. She was able to mix and mingle and meet new people, and she experienced new things. She felt like, you know what? Miami might be the place for me.
Diana and Luis went their separate ways, and she was looking forward to this new life in Florida.
But after only 6 months of living it up in Florida, Diana realized just how homesick she'd become.
She missed her mom, she missed her dad, she missed her friends. So she came back to New York. She went right back to work in the same place.
What are you doing out here?
But now, just a few months after returning to New York, tragedy has struck.
Diana Casado's mother discovered her in her car, bleeding.
She subsequently calls 911.
Over here!
When first responders arrive on the scene, it's clear what happened to her.
She had an apparent gunshot wound to the head.
But she is still alive.
She still had vital signs and was breathing.
27-year-old Diana Casado had left her life and her love in New York to find herself again.
She was down in Florida for several months in 2016.
She was feeling like she didn't really know who she was.
She couldn't commit to Luis feeling like this, so they split up and she went to stay with her sister in Miami.
But it didn't take long for her homesickness to bring her back to Yonkers.
She felt like the grass wasn't that much greener on the other side, so back to Yonkers it was.
And she quickly reconnected with Luis.
Her friends wondered if they would get back together.
But now, Diana's future hangs in the balance.
Let's get her out of here. Patrol officers arrived and confirmed that we had a female who was shot at the location. She still had vital signs and was breathing, despite a gunshot wound to the head.
She was taken to the hospital down in New York City.
While officers transport Diana's mother to the station to get her statement, detectives take their first look at the crime scene.
Diana had been seated in the driver's seat of the vehicle.
There was blood all over inside the car.
We surmised that the suspect shot her as she was about to get out of the car because she was shot close range and the trajectory was downward.
While detectives don't locate any weapons at the scene, they do find evidence to point to the type of gun that was used.
There was a shell casing inside the vehicle.
It was a .40 caliber.
They also take note of what isn't in the vehicle.
There was no pocketbook in the car. They couldn't find her cell phone.
When you see that there's property missing, you start to lean towards it being a robbery.
Hopeful that someone may have seen the shooter, police start going door to door.
This was a highly populated area, and people were always coming and going.
And it doesn't take them long to find a witness.
One of the neighbors told us that they heard a gunshot.
I was in bed when I heard a loud bang.
Gunshots are not uncommon in that area of Yonkers.
People at that point kind of become rather numb to crime. Unfortunately, it was just another day in the hood.
But after the fact, she remembered that's when she thought she heard a gunshot.
She was absolutely sure it was 3:01 because when she heard the shot, she looked at the cable box and saw it was 3:01 a.m.
She ran to the window to look, but she didn't see anything out of the ordinary, so she didn't call the police.
Okay.
If the shot the neighbor heard was the one to wound Diana, it would mean she was sitting in her car alive for more than 4 hours with a gunshot wound to the head before her mom found her.
The woman's statement doesn't help them identify a suspect, but it does give them a timeline. Now they can look to another kind of eyewitness.
There were several cameras in that area, and detectives hope they caught something, but it takes a long time to collect all that video, process it, and review it.
In the meantime, detectives head back to the station to talk to Diana's mom, Leonida.
She was extremely devastated.
Have you gotten any updates from the hospital?
She just went to surgery. They said it could be.
Her mother wakes up and realizes she's not home.
That's when she went looking for Diana and found her clinging to life.
How will her mother ever get that memory out of her head?
Can I go to my baby now?
Before they let her go, detectives need a little more information on Diana's personal life.
Was she seeing anyone? Nothing serious since she returned from Florida.
Diana's mom explained that she'd been back in New York for a couple of months and reconnected with her ex, Luis, but they weren't exclusive.
So she wasn't out with Luis last night?
She said no, not that night.
We appreciate you coming in. I'll walk you out.
When Diana's father shows up at the station, he's just as shocked about what's happened.
Diana's father and mother were separated. Now,
So after Diana's mother found her, her brother showed up at the scene and then went back to her father's house and told her father.
There wasn't much anyone could do at the hospital, so he come to the station to help them find out who did this.
he was just trying to give us as much info as possible.
I can't believe it. I just saw her yesterday.
Could you tell us more about yesterday?
He said she went over probably about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
He told them that her ex-boyfriend, Luis Altaret Rivera, was staying with him, so he was there too.
So you're close with this young man?
Of course, he's part of the family.
Luis did things for me. He'd take him to a doctor's appointment, he cooked for him, he cleaned the house.
And Diana didn't mind this friendship?
She and Luis are still close.
They kept the relationship very cordial.
A lot of people thought they were going to get back together.
But like Diana's mother, her father has no idea who would want to harm her.
The dad assumed it was a stranger, the robbery.
When detectives sit down with her ex, Luis, he agrees.
They'd gotten his number from Diana's dad, and he was more than happy to come in.
When she parked her car, it's very dangerous. I even gave her a mage not to know.
This was looking more and more like a random crime, but law enforcement always wants to start with the victim's inner circle and then move out from there.
Luis confirms to detectives that he and Diana were still on good terms.
And you and Diana never had any problems? Never had a problem. No? Nothing physical, anything like that? Never.
He was very polite, very cooperative and cordial.
However, he does admit to being shocked by the way Diana ended their relationship.
He thought she was going to stay with her sister for a week vacation in Florida.
She told me she was going for 10 days, and she never came back. That was surprising too.
It also raises a red flag for the detectives.
Maybe he hadn't accepted their breakup.
Did you want to get back together with her? I would have loved to.
Luis was still in love with Diana.
But he knew she felt differently.
She don't want to have a serious relationship. They will still have sex, but not like seriously,
Luis tells detectives that he respected her decision and eventually realized it was time to move on.
He said he started dating and seeing other people as well.
I have a girl. Not like wife, but like girl, friend.
And so did Diana.
Did she have other friends or no? No, she go out with females.
Diana was exploring her sexuality.
Diana was dating, and she met a woman, and she was in love.
The first suspect that most police officers look at are an intimate partner.
If she'd found out Diana was seeing Luis again, that could be a motive.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
As Diana Casado undergoes emergency surgery for a gunshot wound to the head, her ex-boyfriend, Luis Altaret Rivera, has just told Yonkers detectives that he'd heard she'd been seeing someone new.
He said she met a woman and she was in love.
But that isn't the only rumor Luis shares with detectives.
They broke up, I don't know, something happened with her.
Could Diana's new love interest be responsible for her death?
You need to consider people's motives. Could be this overwhelming jealousy of, a fear of losing Diana.
Of course, the fact that Diana was seeing someone new could also give Luis a motive.
How did that make you feel? I didn't care because we didn't have a serious relationship.
To prove it, Luis tells them he was with his new girlfriend in the Bronx on the night of the shooting.
What time did you go down? It was like 1.
They went in the car talking for a little bit, and then he told her, hey, let's go to Yonkers. Diana's father bought me a bottle of rum from DR.
He then drove to the father's house, and then he brings her back down to the Bronx.
They sat there, drank a little bit, and then she said she had to go, and he went home.
I got home around 5 something. In the morning? Yeah.
Luis insists he has nothing to hide.
He gave his consent to search his vehicle to see his cell phone. We swabbed his person for gunshot residue.
And when the detectives follow up with his new girlfriend, she confirms everything he's told them.
His girlfriend in the Bronx was like, yeah, he was with me.
He had nothing to do with this.
It's a setback for the investigation. One that's made even worse when the detectives receive a call from the hospital.
Diana was taken off of life support, and she passed.
Anxious to find her killer, detectives waste no time tracking down their next suspect.
They were able to find the girlfriend's name through Diana's social media.
She was a young lady named Angelica.
But when Angelica shows up for her interview, she seems confused.
Can I ask what this is about?
I explained to her that Diana had been killed.
What?
She seemed really caught off guard.
Angelica tells them she'd had plans to see Diana the night before.
They were supposed to go out, but she ended up staying at work. They didn't meet up.
So wait, you two weren't broken up? No, definitely not.
When was the last time you two talked?
It was last night, a little after midnight.
Diana was out at a bar.
She was with her friend Ricardo.
Just a friend? For her, yeah.
Angelica thought Ricardo wanted more, but she didn't think Diana would ever go for it.
We had a good thing.
When detectives follow up with her supervisor, Angelica's alibi seems to check out.
She was working, and it was a distance away. We knew it wasn't her.
Ricardo White is now detectives' best lead.
He was the last person seen with her.
We were able to locate the gentleman to interview him.
Ricardo White?
Yeah. What's this about?
He was completely shocked to hear what had occurred.
Ricardo tells detectives that when he last saw Diana, she was very much alive.
I went to a bar, hung out for a little while.
She's having a good time. She's dancing, having a couple drinks.
At about 2:30, he walked her out of the bar. She got into her car. She drove off.
Ricardo claims he doesn't know where Diana went next. But is he telling the truth?
And how would you describe your relationship with Diana? We're just friends.
Were you looking for more than that?
I mean, I want to say no, but she was with Angelica.
To the detectives, he seems genuine.
He was very helpful. He said, whatever you need from me, I will help. But I had nothing to do with this.
Requesting the surveillance footage from the bar confirms Ricardo's story.
It's Ricardo.
In the video, Diana is clearly seen leaving the bar at 2:30 a.m.
You see them on video walking to the car, then you see him coming back.
He's going to add to the club for approximately an hour thereafter. And that would put him in the club long after we believe she was shot.
Which means the investigation has now come to a standstill.
It's frustrating. You feel like you owe the family an explanation.
Take a seat, please.
But a meeting with Diana's brother is about to change the course of the investigation.
He wanted to talk to them about Diana's ex-boyfriend, Luis.
I know my dad loved the guy. He didn't know everything.
According to Junior, Diana's father thought Luis had always been a doting partner.
He's going to sit right next to her. He's going to get her drink. He's going to drive her to and from work.
But Junior saw Luis's behavior differently.
He said, he was very controlling.
You wearing that?
Yeah.
Put this on.
He saw him as someone who wants to be able to monitor her every move.
She couldn't do anything on her own.
When Diana decided to end the relationship and move to Florida, Junior was optimistic. But as soon as she returned to New York, he says Luis started worming his way back into her life.
He attempts to resume the controlling behavior, following her at work, trying to be everywhere she is.
He wouldn't take no for an answer.
Junior made sure to let police know that if anyone was capable of doing this to his sister,
Diana, what's this?
it was Luis.
Less than 48 hours after Diana Casado was murdered, her brother Junior has just told Yonkers detectives that they should be looking at her ex-boyfriend, Luis Altoret Rivera.
He saw him as someone who wants to be able to monitor Diana's every move.
He said Luis controlled everything that Diana did. He controlled what she wore, what she could buy, where they would go.
You wearing that?
Yeah.
Put this on.
It's a classic sign of domestic violence.
Put it on.
He saw her as an object. She was property to him.
He's got to be looked at for this crime.
However, the facts suggest Luis couldn't have pulled the trigger.
The gunshot residue testing they conducted on Luis came back negative. And they confirmed his alibi for the night that Diana was killed.
I'll walk you out.
At Junior's insistence, detectives decide to take a closer look at Luis.
Junior didn't know all the ins and outs of the couple's relationship, but he said one of Diana's oldest friends, Camilla Rhodes, would know more.
Called down to the station, Camilla seems just as convinced of Luis's guilt.
What her brother told you, that isn't the half of it.
She admits that when Diana first met Luis, she was desperately in love.
The beginning of a relationship, everything's amazing.
But she says the couple's age gap soon created a dangerous dynamic.
Oftentimes what happens when you have an older partner in a relationship with someone significantly younger, there is grooming that happens with the younger individual.
In domestic relationships that turn bad, there's often a trend of a controlling nature by one party, where that party tries to be present to every moment of their partner's life. There's a pattern of overwhelming control.
It's a common thread in many abusive relationships, especially those involving young people.
Younger teens and adults have not developed at that point your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is your powerhouse for making decisions.
For someone to come in, especially someone to come in with toxic traits, at that point, you don't even have the critical thinking skills to discern what is toxic about them and what is you.
Louis molded her into the person that he wanted her to be, which was almost like his little puppet.
And by the time they moved in together, Luis had full control over Diana's life.
He didn't work. He made Diana cook, clean, everything.
She paid the rent. He just lived off her and sucked her dry.
And over the years, his controlling behavior became even more extreme.
He would drop her off at work and watch, make sure she didn't speak to anybody.
After her shift is over, 8 hours later, he would take her home.
He was trying to dominate her every minute.
She lived this life that no one would want. He would pick out what he wanted her to wear. When she took a shower or a bath, he had to watch because he wanted to see if there was any marks on her neck, like hickeys.
If Diana was gonna go visit Camila, then Louis was gonna go with her.
Sometimes they're in a restaurant or in a club. He'd be outside watching to see what she's doing.
I thought it was crazy, but I didn't want to step in the middle of their relationship until I saw the bruises.
That's ridiculous, man. Wait, Diana, what's this? It's not a big deal.
She told her, like, look, you know, you have this bruise. Did he do this?
She said, he hit me, he threw me up against the wall.
Camilla urged her friend to get help, but Diana was too afraid.
She said, I'm not going to get an order of protection because that's going to really set him off.
She did not want to get her family involved because she was afraid what he would do to them.
You need to tell someone.
Don't do it. He'll hurt my family.
He had threatened to do harm to Diana's mom, Diana's brother.
Imagine the burden that she had to carry.
Diana was physically abused, but I want to say the mental abuse was worse. Fearing for her mother, her brother, her father.
However, Camilla says that after nearly a decade together, Diana began plotting her escape.
She told Luisa she was going to stay with her sister for a week vacation. She intends to set up permanent residence.
She was cleaning the slate and starting a new life down there.
Unfortunately, Diana's fresh start wasn't what she bargained for.
He soon follows her down there.
Did he find her?
No, but he was looking.
He didn't know where she lived.
He was trying to get the address, but she wouldn't give it to him. But he continued to call her.
This guy just would not leave her alone.
She would always have it in the back of her mind that at any given moment, Luis Rivera could pop out of the woodwork and terrorize her.
Convinced she'd never find peace in Florida, Diana eventually moved back home.
She went back to work at the same location.
In an abusive relationship, it's not really recommended for you to return back to the location in which you were abused.
But Diana felt there was no escape.
She was stuck. This guy wasn't going to let her go.
He found her, and the same cycle continued.
She was afraid to tell him no.
They started seeing each other once in a while.
It was to keep him happy, just so he didn't, react or harm her family.
But Diana had refused to stop living her own life.
She met a woman, and she was fond of her.
It was overwhelmingly happy for her, like just being with this new person who made her feel good and didn't tear her down. She was ready to just embrace whatever came forward.
But Camilla fears that Diana made a fatal mistake.
She had a conversation with Louis 2 days before she was killed. She basically told him it's over. I'm not going to be with you. I'm never going to be with you.
I tried to stop her. I didn't think it was a good idea.
She told Diana, you might be signing your own death sentence.
It's over!
Yonkers police now know that nearly everything Diana Casado's ex-boyfriend, Luis Altoret Rivera, told them about their relationship was a lie.
There was a big disparity in the way Luis described the relationship and how other people described it.
It wasn't a good relationship.
This guy is abusive.
And when police check Luis's criminal record, it's clear that's not the only thing he lied about.
He had an extensive record. In 2007, he threw something at his wife at the time.
They had a really bad relationship. He would beat her in front of the kids.
In 2009, he had an assault, unlawful imprisonment. That was a domestic violence with his wife. Again,
he held her against her will for a period of time, and he assaulted her and poured floor cleaner down her throat.
There was also a domestic disturbance with his niece in the Bronx. He's always been very abusive.
Which makes detectives wonder, did Luis kill Diana?
Luis claimed to have been with another woman, and this other woman vouched for him.
However, his phone records tell a different story.
He told police he was with his new girlfriend from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. on the night of the murder, but his phone showed he was still texting her at 3 a.m.
If you've been sitting together in a car or anywhere else, why would you be texting?
His alibi's not adding up.
When detectives follow up with Luis's girlfriend a second time, she quickly cracks.
She soon realized that we knew more than she thought.
And at that point, she's like, no, he wasn't with me that early.
He had told her to tell the police that they were together from roughly midnight till 5 a.m. When in truth, he spent about an hour and a half with her, from about 3:30 to maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Detectives aren't surprised when she explains why she lied.
She was afraid that she would end up like Diana Casado if she didn't say that he was with her.
Cell phone evidence also places Luis in the area of the crime scene that night.
His cell phone is pinging off cell towers in Yonkers beyond 3:30 in the morning.
He wasn't in the Bronx where he said he was.
The cell phone towers connected him to the homicide.
Even with Luis's alibi proven to be a lie, detectives have no hard evidence that he shot Diana.
We needed a physical evidence.
But they end up with something even better.
A few days after the shooting, police finally received the results from their video cameras.
I was in bed when I heard a loud bang.
Our ear witness told us she heard a gunshot right at 3 o'clock. 2 minutes after that, we have Luis walking on video about 100 yards from the location. Further, we have him carrying on his back a purse.
When he gets down the hill, there is a dumpster right around the corner.
He dumped her pocketbook and its contents into the dumpster.
He closes it and he walks down the block.
It's the smoking gun detectives have been looking for.
There was little doubt in anyone's mind that Luis was the suspect and the murderer.
There's just one problem.
He was no longer anywhere to be found.
Days go by without any sign of Luis.
His cell phone went completely dark.
They couldn't find him. He was basically on the run.
When police break the news to Diana's family, they're furious at Luis's betrayal. But no one is more shocked than her father.
The father didn't know any of the stuff that was going on with Luis and his daughter. He didn't know how he was mistreating his daughter.
But Dad's mind, he's like, when could he have possibly have left to actually commit a homicide?
He thought, he's laying on my couch. He was here when I woke up.
How can you commit something so grotesque and still be able to be sound asleep hours later? The thought of it for Dad, understandably, was just unfathomable.
It broke my heart because her father told me I only let him stay and I was nice to him because I thought if I was nice to him, he would be good to my daughter. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way.
Eventually, Yonkers police recruit the help of the FBI to track Luis down.
They helped us with tracking his cell phone. He was all over the place. Connecticut, Florida. But by the time you get to that location, he's no longer there.
He seemed to always be one step ahead.
More than a year goes by without an arrest in Diana's case.
Being patient is very difficult, especially when you know who your suspect is.
But the police refuse to give up.
When it comes to something so heinous as what happened to Diana Casado, we will find who did it, and we will eventually bring you to justice.
Then finally, in March of 2018, they received new information on Luis's whereabouts.
This is Benjamin.
We went to Puerto Rico to his father's house.
Once again, he's managed to slip away. But this time, he's left a sickening trail.
We found out that there was actually a girlfriend in Puerto Rico who was murdered 13 months after Diana was. And he's a person of interest in that case.
Her name was Ilia Milan Melendez.
He got a phone call one day from his uncle that she was at a bar and she's drunk. He comes over to the bar and forcibly drags her from the bar, puts her in his car, and that's the last she's seen.
She was found nearly decapitated in a shallow grave by a beach.
I mean, this guy he's a psychopath.
In the aftermath, Luis had disappeared again.
How long can this go on? It became that much more important to not leave him free for any longer.
Then, in February of 2019, investigators get the break they've been waiting for.
We were able to get a new cell phone number for him. He's in Vancouver, Washington.
He knew we had to move quickly.
We got on a plane and went out there.
It's time. Let's grab him.
Two years after the murder of Diana Casado, Yonkers homicide detectives have followed their suspect's trail across the country to Washington State.
We found out where he was living. We went over, knocked on the door. He opened the door.
Put your hands up!
We explained who we were, why we were there, and asked, would you come with us? He said, sure, no problem. He was very cooperative.
In an interrogation room, police present Luis with the evidence against him. He seems unfazed.
Look, Luis, we know you lied to us. Do you have anything you want to say?
Even after putting holes in his story, Luis didn't concede to being untruthful about his timeline.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
If you let your guard down, he can sweet talk anyone.
The detectives know someone like Luis will never confess.
At one point, Detective Guy says, look at me and tell me that you didn't kill Diana. And he just smirked. He always thought he was one step ahead. He was just smarter than everybody. He was gonna get away with it.
But in the end, his denials don't matter.
Let me see your hands.
We had enough to go and charge him with the murder.
Sit tight.
They had made arrangements to have him extradited back to New York.
For Diana's family, news of the arrest lifts a weight from their shoulders.
It was very emotional for Detective Geis and I to be able to tell the family, hey, we got him.
The family, I have to say, God bless them, because I don't believe I would be that patient. They're a beautiful family, truly.
And on May 23rd, 2022, when Luis stands trial, the prosecution doesn't hold back.
They said this crime was cold, calculated, and fueled by Luis's jealousy and his need to control Diana.
She told Louis that she was in love with a woman and that was it. Like, she was done with him and she was gonna move on.
That was the tipping point.
He took that as a sign of disrespect, like, who do you think you are?
So in the early morning hours of January 22nd, 2017, police believe Luis contacted Diana and asked her to meet him.
She did agree to meet him.
We have very good evidence that Diana picked up Luis around 2:45 in the morning.
We have video of her car actually going towards the direction where he was living. And then it comes back. And it looks like there's two people in the car.
And then we were able to follow her car on camera, and she parks it out in the parking lot shortly thereafter.
All right, Luis, what is this about?
Her guard was down. She was expecting a conversation, one of the many conversations that they had had before.
But Luis was planning something else.
They started arguing about their relationship.
Diana, I love you.
No, this isn't love. I can't keep doing this with you.
When Luis realized it was finally over, he pulled out a gun.
To show that he is still in control, he did something that ended it all.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Prosecutors argued that the surveillance footage proves Luis's guilt.
The gunshot was at 3 o'clock.
At the time, the cameras in the area caught him walking from the scene all the way down to where he finally threw out Diana's purse.
The video evidence was just so overwhelming.
But the defense disputes the details.
The defense in the case was, yeah, that's Luis on video, but you haven't proven that he was the one who killed her.
For the jury, there's no question who ended Diana Casado's life that night.
The jury came back less than 2 hours and convicted him of the second-degree murder.
When they said guilty, it was such a great feeling.
You never know with a jury. And when they said guilty, man, I was like, wow, this is great. This is great.
1 month later, Luis returns to the courtroom for sentencing.
Diana's mother was able to make a victim impact statement.
She spoke from her heart, and she broke down. Her family broke down in the audience.
She just said, you know, you took everything. You took my life away. I'm dead. Diana was everything to her. There was not only mom and...
The people, they had a mask on, and I think it was a black Jeep Cherokee.
I responded to that and was told by the officers that were securing the scene outside that there was someone that was deceased inside of the parking lot.
I saw a white Toyota Camry pulled in a parking space. The driver's side of the vehicle, the victim was laying on the ground. There was a pool of blood around her head.
She was dressed in black doctor's scrubs, and her name was embroidered on the front of her shirt.
It was definite that she had been shot. Next to the body, there was a magazine from a handgun, a spent round, and a shell casing.
The police request the attendance of the medical examiner.
The medical examiner did arrive at the scene, and he was able to confirm that she was deceased from one gunshot wound to the head. The bullet entered in the back of her skull and actually came out underneath her chin area.
The police have already been able to confirm the identity of the deceased.
The officers, prior to my arrival, checked the license plate on the car, and that came back as Kendra Hatcher being the owner of the vehicle, which matched what was on her shirt also.
Detectives now begin to examine what evidence they can find.
The cell phone at the scene was given to the homicide investigators. Obviously, they wanted to find out what numbers had been recently called or dialed on that phone, what messages had come in, The pistol magazine, which was also found at the scene with 13 live rounds in it, I took back to our crime scene lab and processed for latent prints.
We looked for her purse and we found out that her purse was missing. And so we just began doing our normal course of investigation, looking for witnesses and also video cameras inside the parking garage.
Officers established Kendra Hatcher's last movements.
I found out that Kendra was actually a resident in that building and that she was on her way home from work. September 2nd was her last day at work for a few days because she was going on a vacation.
Kendra's fiancé, Ricardo Ricky Paniagua, soon arrives.
One of the most painful parts of this whole story that I think of is that Ricky, the fiance, was coming back into the apartment complex with dinner, and there was something going on. There were like police ropes and sirens and things were going on. He didn't know what was going on.
After speaking with him for a couple minutes, Ricky was able to tell me that him and Kendra had been dating for several months, and he was meeting Kendra at her apartment that evening to have dinner. Once he found out that we found Kendra deceased, you could just see just the color go from his body. He almost went into a state of shock once he was able to connect the dots.
Police begin to piece together more information about Kendra.
She had a very humble life growing up. Her mother owned a blanket shop in Springfield, Illinois. She was a cheerleader in high school. And she also was very devoted to her religion.
She was a rising star in her world of dentistry. She was someone that helped many, many people.
She worked with a clinic in the mid-cities of between Dallas and Fort Worth that specialized in lower-income kids because she wanted to help kids.
She also volunteered her time giving back to poor children in South America, donating her abilities as a dentist and her time and her effort to help kids that couldn't afford dentistry.
In recent months, Ricky and Kendra have become very close.
She had told her family that she was super excited about meeting this guy. She said that they're clicking and that, he's a dermatologist and that they would probably end up moving in a year or so after his residency ended. And she just seemed to be really super happy and excited about life.
The most immediate clue to what has happened to Kendra comes from the footage captured on the apartment complex's security camera system.
On the surveillance footage, we were able to see the victim come in to the parking garage and go to a normal parking space. We also found a footage of an older model Jeep Cherokee. This Jeep Cherokee was waiting in the visitor portion of the parking garage, and they followed another vehicle in and parked in a parking space before our victim got there.
She started to get out of her car. An assailant walked up and basically executed her, shot her in the head, took her purse, and fled.
The individual walked back to the back seat of the Jeep. The Jeep went out the wrong direction in the parking garage, made a U-turn, and then they exited.
But there are limitations to what the police can see on the CCTV.
After looking at the video, there was no way we could tell what kind of license plate was on that vehicle. And we had information that it may have been a paper tag.
Police feel the public might be able to help them.
They made the decision to release that tape to the public and say, hey, has anybody seen this vehicle, or do you know what's going on, or this is, this is very much of interest to us. And I think that was very, very key for them because that helped move the case along.
I felt like there was more to the story. There was no random circumstance that caused this murder, that they were there for a specific reason and they were waiting on our victim.
Police have some security footage, a murdered woman and a distraught fiancé. But they have little else to point to a motive for what clearly is the clinical killing of Kendra Hatcher. Dallas, Texas, 2015. Police are investigating the murder of 35-year-old dentist Kendra Hatcher. Most of the incident has been caught on security footage. Detectives have released the tape publicly in the hopes it might elicit a response and information. It does.
The media interest, it did help the case, obviously. I mean, when the news footage of the Jeep Cherokee leaving the garage, that jump-started the investigation when the owner called in.
The man is Jose Luis Ortiz, and he claims he lent his Jeep to a friend, Brenda Delgado.
Jose called in and said that he loaned his Jeep the same day of the murder to Brenda Delgado. Jose actually gave us a phone number for Brenda, and we called her. She told us, I'm house sitting for a friend over in Irving, and I don't have a ride, but if you can come pick me up, I'll come talk with you.
With this connection to the vehicle, Brenda Delgado immediately becomes a person of interest. Detectives try to establish more about her and her background.
Her parents immigrated from Mexico to America, so she still had dual citizenship in both countries. They were good working class folks. She graduated from an area high school. There wasn't money to go to college, so she started working. She got interested in the dental field. She was coming back to school and slowly finishing dental hygienist school when she was in her 30s.
The interesting thing about Brenda Delgado is that she is the former girlfriend of Ricky, the fiancé of Kendra Hatcher.
She had been with Mr. Paniagua several times, dating him. They broke it off. He then met Kendra Hatcher.
Brenda was, by all means, crazy in love with him, fascinated by him. They met the first time, got together, had a relationship. He broke it off. And then at some point after that, they started to get together casually. I would assume that meant they were probably hooking up, but it wasn't anything more. It wasn't a romantic relationship or a long-term relationship.
However, Brenda doesn't see things that way.
There were times where she would seem emotionally unstable. There would be times where she would be overly clingy and just kind of overly attached to him. And I felt like, that kind of fit in with the theme on this case, more so than a robbery.
It appears her view of the relationship has become obsessive.
He would be out for a run on Katy Trail here in Dallas, and she would suddenly run into him, make it appear that it was coincidental when in fact it wasn't. She was stalking him. So I think at that point she was just obsessed and she wanted to get him back any way she could.
For police, it's time to get face-to-face with Brenda Delgado.
Brenda gets called in for a voluntary interview, and she's cooperative. The Dallas police, smart as a bug, those folks taped everything.
Brenda gives the detectives her version of how she spent Wednesday, September 2nd, the day Kendra Hatcher was murdered.
Wednesday, I was in Carrollton,
Okay.
and I studied from maybe 12 all the way to about 6. And then from 6 we went to Fuzzy's. We had some tacos at Fuzzy's in Carrollton.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Who were you studying with?
Billy, this guy, my classmate.
Okay. So how'd you get to Carrollton?
I got a ride to Carrollton.
Okay. Who gave you a ride?
Who gave me a ride? My friend, Crystal.
Crystal?
Mm-hmm.
She told me that early that morning she met up with her friend Crystal. They were having some problems with their vehicle, and she took it to Jose's shop. Jose's a mechanic. Jose looked at it and told her that he needed to work on it, and she borrowed his Jeep. She said that she had a study date that day with some friends, and Crystal dropped her off at a public library, and she spent most of the day studying. She also told me that the library had cameras, and it also had a sign-in log that I could check for her signature.
This level of detail immediately raises a red flag.
Most people don't pay attention to locations having cameras or sign-in logs. It was like it was already pre-formatted.
Brenda can also supply very specific details about where she was at the time of Kendra's death.
And I go to Chili's.
How did you get to the Chili's?
Billy took me.
Billy gave you a ride at Chili's?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have the receipt in my bag. I can tell you exactly. It's on my clothes now.
Okay.
She probably figured if she just showed the receipt, an officer would say, sure, you weren't there, thank you, and that would be over. Fortunately, that's not the way it works in the world of crime.
Most people, when they come down and talk about murder, they're really nervous and kind of taken back. Either they're going to be overwhelmed emotionally because someone lost their life. They're going to be afraid because they're being questioned at a homicide investigation. She didn't seem to match any of those descriptions. She was very cool, calm, and collected, and very organized.
Detectives begin to get more specific with Delgado.
This is the picture of the young lady that got killed. Never seen her before?
I've never seen her.
Okay.
First, they started with Kendra Hatcher. Do you know this person? No, I've never met her. Well, she's engaged to Ricky Patiago. Do you know him? Oh, well, yes, Ricky and I are very close, but we're just friends now.
Detective Barnes needs to find out more about the vehicle used when the murder occurred.
I began to press her on who had had this Jeep. So when I pressed her on her location and whether she was driving the Jeep, she pointed a finger at Crystal and said, you need to talk with her.
Detectives now bring Brenda's friend, Crystal Cortez, in for questioning.
So she is in the police headquarters at the same time Brenda is, and they're interviewing both of them, taping both of them, and then super helpful for information back and forth.
There was a lot of different stories from Crystal. The first version was that she was looking for a parking space because she was going out to eat in a nearby restaurant. And she just happened to park inside the parking garage at the Gable 17. And she heard a loud noise and decided to leave the parking garage.
When I was up there, I heard a shot. I have my son in the back. So I said, no, you know what? Let me get out. I'm coming out. There's a guy running with a mask right in front of me. He stops, he looks dead at me, and I'm just like, horrid. I'm shaking, literally, at this point, because I have my son in the back.
I confronted her with the fact that I actually saw someone get out of her vehicle and walk towards Dr. Hatcher.
Immediately, Crystal's story changes.
Crystal starts making up stories about she was just driving along the park with her son, and this scary man jumped in and told her to drive or he was going to kill her. And then she drove to the apartment complex and had no idea what happened.
However, she's confronted with the fact that there's no sign of anyone who could be considered to be her son on the tape.
Who else was in the vehicle with you?
Just my son, and he was asleep in the back, honestly.
No. That's not going to work either. I want to be able to trust you, and I want to be able to believe you. And I know that what you're telling me is not true.
She switched up the story to be this friend of Brenda's and her drove into the apartment complex, and the motive was going to be robbery, and then she was just going to drive the getaway car, and they were going to be away with some money, and she was going to get $500, and they were going to scare Kendra.
But Crystal Cortez has done no more than implicate herself.
When Crystal admitted that Brenda paid her $500 to go to the parking garage with this unknown male who was armed with a firearm, she self-admitted she put herself at the crime scene. That was enough to charge her. We charged her with capital murder.
Meanwhile, Brenda is still being interviewed by detectives.
The more I watched Brenda Delgado, the more I just knew she was lying. They kept the film running when they would leave the room or do you want to take a bathroom break or do you want some snacks or whatever. So they were friendly to her, but there would be times when she was on camera by herself, the detectives were out of the room, talking to Crystal Cortez. She was just like, oh. And she was doing things like this, and I think she was realizing the trouble that she had stepped into and that what was happening while the detectives were interviewing her.
Agent Barnes now turns up the heat on Delgado.
I began pressing Brenda really hard about where she was at, what she was doing, and why they were there, and what they were there for. And I think that once I began pressing buttons, Brenda felt like she was going to unravel and end up being charged. And she just asked for an attorney.
Brenda clearly hasn't been to the scene of the murder. Detectives don't have enough evidence to charge her, but instinctively they know she is involved in some way.
They felt they did not have enough to issue a warrant for arrest for murder, but they wanted to hold her. They ran her background check, and she had a whole bunch of parking violations, enough to be arrested.
Collectively, we decided it would be better to just put her in jail for her traffic tickets than to charge her with murder and have to release her if we couldn't find enough details to prove it at that point.
But Brenda has other plans.
As soon as somebody comes down here, or she on her own pays the $300 or $400 that's owed, whatever's the fine that's not paid, as soon as you pay that, they release you immediately. And so it's not like you're sticking them in jail on some kind of a serious charge where they're going to have to wait and see a judge, and you're going to have to go through at least an 18-hour process. You're putting her in there. She's going to be out potentially in a couple, 2 to 4 hours, which she was.
We found out that she left jail, she called a taxi to a local hospital, and she called her father and asked her father to pick her up.
Within hours, Brenda Delgado flees the state and crosses the border into Mexico.
She already had her backup plan in place, and at that point, we were just playing catch-up.
Detectives now believe that Brenda Delgado is at the center of the murder of Kendra Hatcher.
All of the early indicators on this investigation seem to point back to Brenda. Jose didn't know Kendra. Crystal didn't know Kendra. It all pointed back at Brenda. Brenda had the motive to want Kendra dead.
In Dallas, Texas, police are hunting for Brenda Delgado, a suspect in the murder of 35-year-old dentist Kendra Hatcher. Delgado has fled to Mexico, but investigators are continuing to question Crystal Cortez, Delgado's accomplice, who drove the Jeep from which the killer emerged to shoot Kendra. However, they are still trying to identify the shooter.
Just crunching down phone records between Brenda, Crystal. We also located a phone inside Brenda's apartment. We got phone records for that number, and all of these phones had a common phone number that they were communicating with. And we were able to locate that phone number and do some subpoenas for the phone records on that phone.
Police reach out to federal agencies for assistance.
The FBI got involved about a month after it happened. At the time, they hadn't identified the shooter in the case. They only knew him as Chris, so they were looking for help in that regard. They had a telephone number for Chris. We were able to obtain a search warrant to obtain the real-time location information associated with that phone. The pings on the phone brought us to an apartment complex in South Dallas.
That same day, Crystal is brought in for further questioning.
So there was the blue Sebring part right there.
Okay, was it an older looking Sebring?
No, this is like, it's your, maybe
like this color blue or dark blue?
No. It's a shiny blue.
She gives me a description of the shooter's car, and she said he drives a blue Chrysler Sebring. I picked my phone up and I called the FBI agents that were doing surveillance out in this parking lot and gave them the car description, and they told me that they see the car in the same parking lot. By watching the phone pings, they noticed the phone started moving, and they also noticed that the blue Chrysler Sebring was moving at the same time that the cell phone was moving. And it pulls over in a parking lot a couple blocks away from this apartment complex, and they walk up to him and make contact.
The man is Christopher Love. He is taken into custody and the car is impounded.
The car was towed to the auto pound, and I began interviewing Christopher Love. I interviewed him all the way through the course of the night into the early morning hours of October 2nd.
Searching the car, they didn't really find anything, and it was a little bit of a dead end.
Detectives have drawn a blank, so they turn to another police resource to intensify the investigation.
A canine that was in training at the time was brought to the Dallas Auto Pound. The canine had been trained to find explosives. That could be anywhere from gunpowder to bomb material C4.
They sniffed the car. The dog wisely stopped at a couple places. They found some residue, but they didn't find enough evidence yet. And then the dog zoomed in on the console in between the driver's and passenger seat, up one side and down the other. So that was super helpful. The investigators were able to remove the panel, and lo and behold, what's in there? A gun.
Christopher Love is confronted with what the canine has managed to uncover.
Once I showed him a picture of the firearm, it was like somebody letting the air out of a balloon. His body language, he just kind of sunk down in his chair. His head dropped. He tells me, okay. I was there. I was with Crystal. I got out of the Jeep to walk over to get Kendra's purse, and Crystal fired a shot from the Jeep out the window, and it hit Kendra. And he goes back into the Jeep, and they drive away.
But Detective Barnes knows better.
I saw the video, and what he was describing was a scene out of a James Bond movie. There was no way that Crystal could throw the car in reverse, shoot out a passenger window while backing up, hit someone in the head, and one shot get it done. And also the magazine to the firearm was laying next to the body. So I knew that my shooter was there, close range, and standing beside Kendra whenever she died. There's a video camera from the parking garage on the other side. And that's how I know which side of the vehicle you got out of. And only one person got out of that vehicle.
I hopped in the jobs.
That one person that got out, the one person that got out of that vehicle was you. I actually pressed him a little bit about being the shooter. And when he didn't feel like there was any way out, and there's no way to explain it other than to tell the truth, he asked for a lawyer. Well, I can tell you, man, that as far as this thing goes, that And so once he terminated the interview, I went back to my desk and began typing his murder warrant, capital murder warrant, and he knocked on the door again. He wanted to sit and talk with me, and I told him I had to read his Miranda warning again if he wanted to talk, and he said okay. And he just wanted to ask me one question. He wanted to know, why did we let Brenda go? I thought it was pretty significant. I thought that was him saying, hey, you got me, now I want you to get her.
Crystal Cortez is also bowing to the inevitable.
I really want to go home with my baby.
You're not trying to cover for
No, I'm not covering anybody. I don't want nothing to do with this. I want to go home now. I really do. I want to go to my baby, okay?
I understand that.
I'm helping you guys with everything I can. I just want to go home to Ivan, okay? I know you guys are trying to help me. I'm trying to help you out. I'm not trying to cover for anybody.
So Crystal was charged with capital murder. At some point, she agreed to a deal. The deal was, if you are truthful and if you can testify against Brenda, we will recommend you for 35 years to life. You will be pleading guilty to capital murder.
They needed Crystal to get to Brenda. It's the only opportunity for her. 17 and a half years, you're eligible for parole. You may or may not get it, but you're eligible. She's got a child. She's got to be thinking about a whole lot of things, and she doesn't want to be locked up till the day she dies.
She was the one that kind of put the pieces together for law enforcement, kind of explained what happened and allowed law enforcement to arrest the other people that were involved in it.
Detectives know they have Crystal and Christopher, but now the spotlight turns to Brenda Delgado. They strongly suspect that she has manipulated the other two.
One of the things that I learned working this case, that Brenda was very good at reading people. She was able to sit down with someone, figure out who that person was, figure out where they were at in life, and specifically what they needed in life.
It was a business transaction for them. Should we beat him up? Should we kill her? Should we... They just handled it as if it was business.
She actually offered Crystal $500. At the time, Crystal was a single mother. She was out of work because her vehicle wasn't wasn't working, and she needed some mechanic work done to her vehicle, and she didn't have the money to get it done. Brenda was able to figure out that she needed money to be able to go to work every day and take care of her child. And so she just kind of dangled that carrot in front of Crystal to get her to participate in this murder.
And it is becoming apparent that Brenda had lied to Christopher in order to manipulate him even further.
Christopher Love was a self-proclaimed low-level drug dealer that just moved to this Dallas area, and he wanted to be Scarface. He was looking forward to being the next up-and-coming drug dealer in Dallas, and Brenda picked up on that, and that's what she offered him. She told Christopher that she was part of the drug cartel, and that Kendra was actually stealing drugs from the cartel, and if he participated in this murder, that he'd get a lifetime supply of drugs.
At the center of everything appears to be Brenda's jealousy of Ricky's newfound happiness with Kendra.
I think her obsession with Kendra Hatcher and losing Dr. Paniagua was stronger than anything she could think of. She just had one goal in mind, and that was to either hurt Dr. Paniagua, which was one of the very first things that came into their minds, or remove Kendra Hatcher from the picture.
On Brenda's phone, we looked into the notes portion of her phone, and we found an email address for Ricardo and also a password. Based on our interviews with Crystal told us that Brenda was able to track Ricardo, and she was able to know where he was at.
When Ricky and Brenda were hooking up the second time around, Ricky was still helping her, so they had a joint cell phone account, and apparently that account gave her access to his phone online. She had put tracking software on his phone. She was able to know where that phone was, where he was.
She would find his location, and she would go and watch him, and then she would go have casual encounters where she would randomly bump into him and have conversations with him.
And her obsession also extended to Kendra.
In Brenda's phone, she had a bunch of pictures and videos she downloaded from Kendra's Facebook page. She had been stalking Ricardo and Kendra at the same time, just kind of staying up with their relationship. And I think she used social media as a way just to kind of figure out what they were doing.
It is becoming clear that Brenda was going to do whatever it took to achieve her objective.
Not only had she approached Crystal Cortez and Christopher Love, we interviewed some people that she had approached before about trying to convince them to do the same thing. Namely, her cousin, having him attack Kendra Hatcher with a baseball bat. He ultimately declined to do so. So she had been trying to find someone who would carry this out for some time.
Crystal had got in deep and was doing what Brenda wanted.
And speaking with Crystal, she told me that she started going around just talking to people that they knew about, where they could get a gun, and also if they would be willing to help them in this murder. And through a mutual friend, a gentleman by the name of Kelly Ellis, Kelly knew Christopher Love, and he introduced them.
For whatever reason, they just fell in, and the ball started rolling, and Crystal started agreeing to these things, and she found a shooter for Brenda. She agreed to drive the getaway vehicle. She helped Brenda get rid of evidence after the fact for $500 and some drugs.
Delgado was across the border, in her mind, safe from the authority of U.S. law enforcement.
My arrest authority ends in the state of Texas, and I think Brenda knew that. She felt like she was out of reach of the Dallas Police Department. But what she didn't plan for was that we have a partnership with the FBI, and they've got worldwide jurisdiction.
When people try to flee the U.S. to another country to escape justice, that always is a thorn in my side. So I always give those cases a little extra attention because I want to make sure that these people get caught and brought back to the U.S. I don't want people thinking that they can flee our borders and not answer the charges that are brought against them.
The FBI felt like the longer that she was free, the longer that she was evading law enforcement, that we were at risk for her committing another offense.
Dallas police now move to make Brenda Delgado an international fugitive from justice.
We were able to get her on the FBI most wanted list. I was pretty excited about it because I knew that I would get my shot at her again.
In 2016, Dallas police and the FBI are continuing their investigation into the murder of 35-year-old dentist Kendra Hatcher. Investigators have apprehended the man who pulled the trigger, Christopher Love, and the getaway driver, Crystal Cortez. However, they are still searching for the woman they believe orchestrated the crime, Brenda Delgado, who is a fugitive in Mexico and on the FBI's most wanted list. Detectives and agents now intensify their search for Delgado.
We started interviewing extended family members to see if we could get any cooperation from them. Initially, we weren't successful. They didn't want to cooperate, but ultimately some of them did. And that was very helpful in ultimately locating her.
I believe the phone was instrumental in tracking. They were able to pick up who she was calling and where money transfers were being made for her to have money to live on out there.
We received information that her family was sending her money via some money transfer business, and we were able to corroborate some of that. We saw some money going down to a state in Mexico where we knew she had relatives.
This information is further corroborated by a tip directly to investigators.
We received information that Brenda was at a specific location in Mexico, and the tipster began providing detailed information of where Brenda was at.
It allowed us to identify her exact location in Mexico, and we relayed that to Mexican Interpol officers, and they arrested her, within hours after we passed on that information.
Texas authorities moved to extradite Brenda Delgado from Mexico to the United States.
It's a long process to do that. I mean, our State Department has to reach out to whoever's the comparable authority in Mexico City. I mean, I don't remember how long that process took, but 6 months to a year. I mean, it was a good while.
For the process to work, certain conditions must be met.
Brenda was a dual citizen, Mexico citizenship and American citizenship. And Mexico has a standing policy that they do not extradite any of their nationals, any of their citizens, into a death penalty situation.
The deal was that she would not be put to death here in the States. So in order for us to apprehend her and bring her back, we had to agree to that.
We flew to Mexico on October 5th of 2016. We met Mexican authorities in a hangar at the airport. We searched her. We placed the restraints on her that she would be wearing on the flight. We were able to board the flight before any of the other passengers through the back entrance and flew back to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport nonstop.
I actually met her when she arrived here. I was the first face that she saw when she walked in the airport hangar. I'm a pretty competitive person, and even though I didn't get a chance to interview her again, in my mind, I was like, I told you I was going to get you.
Prosecutors now need to prepare for 3 trials: Brenda Delgado, Crystal Cortez, and Christopher Love.
I've been working in the Dallas Homicide Unit for a little over 9 years. And out of every murderer that I've come across, Christopher Love is about as cold as any murderer that I've dealt with. No sign of remorse, no sign of emotion, no sign of regret.
This is a vicious, vicious, vicious person.
Christopher Love was sentenced to death. He's still on death row from what I understand, and I don't know if a date's been set yet for that.
Crystal Cortez's fate has already been more or less agreed.
Crystal was charged with capital murder as well, based on her agreement to testify against Christopher and also to testify against Brenda. She was given 35 years in prison.
In the case of Brenda Delgado, prosecutors paint a picture of a ruthless manipulator.
They did a great job at pointing out the specific facts of this investigation and just kind of like laying out who Brenda was. You know, that she's not just this pretty face that you see sitting in a courtroom, that this lady is a monster.
I don't think she even thought much about covering her tracks. It was all about getting this done. This focus of, I need to get Kendra Hatcher out of the way so I can get Ricky back.
Brenda had a very blank look on her face, almost like she was in disbelief that she was actually sitting in this courtroom and that she was being held accountable for what she did.
I don't really know that she felt right and wrong. I don't really know that she felt any guilt. The best word I can come up with is sociopathic.
She just appeared to be very nonchalant and like everything was okay, and it would be until the very end.
When the jury deliberate, they aren't long about coming to a decision.
So I was going down the escalator, and this is, we're less than 20 minutes since the jury went out, and I get a text message, we've got a verdict.
I think we startled some folks. We came back in a half an hour. It was not flippant, however. It was not off the cuff. We came back into the jury room, and someone suggested that we take a sample vote. This is the gut check vote. Let's just write down what we think, and then we'll start talking about it. So a woman volunteered to capture the notes. We all wrote down what we thought, and she opened them up, and they were all in one pile, one after the other. Guilty, 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 guilty.
That's very unusual. In a capital murder case, for the jury to come back, I heard estimates of 18 to 20 minutes that they deliberated. Yeah, that's unheard of. So they were convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that she committed this crime. First and foremost, this was a Dallas Police Department homicide investigation. And everybody understood their roles, and everybody understood that the primary goal was to identify everybody who was involved in this murder for hire and to get everybody arrested and in a courtroom to face the charges against them. And I think every agency did a great job at that.
I think working cases like this just makes it hard for you to trust individuals. But on a positive note, it's kind of offset by all the positives that I learned from working with the family and also the detectives on this case.
There may be a victory of sorts in the convictions, but for the family of Kendra Hatcher, there is just loss.
The thing that bothered me the most about this case was this could have been anyone. Kendra is a truly innocent victim, and she never saw any of this coming. For her to be ambushed and assassinated in a parking garage like an animal, it bothered me. And it is one of those things that you just never forget.
It's such a senseless, tragic loss of life that didn't need to happen. Just the lengths that someone would go to try to get back with an ex-boyfriend. That's very chilling, and it's a stark reminder of kind of the world we live in.
Nothing anyone can do will bring Kendra Hatcher back, and for her family, the pain of losing her endures.
For the family, I don't feel there's closure. The word is a great word. We hear it and we think curtains are shut and we can no longer see what's behind them. But I do not believe that there is true closure in a case like this.
Their daughter, sister, was taken from them in an instant, without any warning and without any reason. So I don't know how you come to terms with that. It's got to be extremely difficult.
We can never bring back Kendra, but we can say, hey, we got the people that were responsible.
2011, Pottawatomie County, Iowa. A shooting is reported.
We were told that there had been shots fired and possibly somebody had been shot.
They find Patty on the kitchen floor with pools of blood all around her.
This particular firearm that was used in this incident was a shotgun, so it's actually shotgun shells that were in the residence.
The perpetrator is quickly apprehended, and the motive soon becomes clear.
He went into a jealous rage, but it wasn't the first time.
Whatever measures he needed to take to make sure that he could control her, he was going to do that.
Just the thought, if I can't have her, nobody can have her.
The victim fights bravely for her life, but sadly succumbs to her injuries almost 2 years later.
No likelihood of recovery. She was removed from life support and she died.
We kind of thought that, she had made it that many months, that she was in the clear and could maybe live a healthy life and move on.
This is the story of a relationship racked with jealousy, the tragic death of a mother of 4, and how her killer attempts to evade justice.
It was just the thought that if I can't have you, nobody will have you.
They're shooting. Oh,
okay, sir.
We need to hurry up.
Okay, is anybody injured?
Yes. Okay.
17th of June, 2011. The Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office receives an urgent 911 call.
Okay, stay on the line here with me. What are you hearing, sir? What are you hearing?
I don't hear anything right now. I heard 2 gunshots, but nobody's talking anymore.
The caller is Ben Shimin. He is with his friend Patty Harker and claims an ex-boyfriend of Patty's called Craig is threatening them with a gun.
Once the 911 call was made, you could immediately hear the screaming, the yelling, mostly Craig and Patty trying to explain. We're just friends. We're just friends. We've been together before. Calm down. And Craig was using profanities, saying, "What the hell are you doing?" So on and so forth. Deputies are dispatched to the scene, while dispatch keeps talking to the caller.
It's about a 19-and-a-half-minute 911 call, and it's interesting to me, I suppose, just professionally, in that there's a lot of very, sort of emotional things going on, and yet the caller, Ben, was locked in a bathroom at the time, and he's pretty calm as he's sort of relaying what's going on.
Do you know what kind of a gun it was?
First initial call came out. I was acting supervisor that night. We were dispatched, 2 of us were dispatched to domestic disturbance. All they told us that there was possibly 3 individuals involved. It's a high priority call because you don't know exactly what's going to happen, so you want to get there, fairly quick.
Pottawatomie County is almost 1,000 square miles. It's a pretty good-sized county. And so, there may be 3 deputies on patrol in the rural area of the county. So it's not like you just get a 3-minute response. He's somewhere in the eastern side of the county. And so he's actually driving as he has the address he knows he's heading to. We've got his cruiser video. And so he, at one point, actually passes Craig. He actually goes to a farm driveway, turns around, and starts a pursuit.
As I keep getting relayed information as I'm going, I was heading south on 330th. We were told that there had been shots fired and possibly somebody had been shot. The whole call turns into a whole different situation. Shooter or the possible suspect had been left the area in a pickup truck. And it was like shortly after that I noticed headlights coming at me on the road. I have to make a decision whether I'm going to go after the vehicle or not. So I turn around on the vehicle and then I start to go after it, and then I can't get on the radio. I'm trying to get a hold of the other officers, and they're not answering. I'm trying to relay information of, what the vehicle is, who possibly is in the vehicle, where my other officers are at. There's just a lot going on in a short amount of time. Back then, we didn't have as good a radio system as we have now. I couldn't figure out really where they were at, so I erred on the side of life at the scene and turned around. And I knew I had another officer coming from the north, so I turned around and continued to this scene.
The house is on a rural track with no streetlights.
Actual residence is off of it's called a gravel road. No lights. I mean, you only have a few houses around, so you have a little bit of light from houses, but that's about it. We approached the house, and I don't know if it's just with everything that was going on, one of the officers, he was a younger guy at the time, he had already drove up, and his car was there.
Deputies can see a subject inside. It's Ben Shimin, who called 911.
I wanted him to come outside the house because, I mean, I don't know what we're getting involved in. Plus, we have to watch, 360 degrees around us. Finally, I think dispatch talked him into coming to us and that it was safe to come out of the house. So he comes out of the house, and then, we have to, I told dispatch to have him, put his hands up when he came to the door, and then we would take over with telling him what to do. We put him into one of the patrol vehicles because, still, we don't know at this time how he's involved. And then when we entered, she was laying on the floor in the kitchen area. It appeared that she had a bullet or had been struck in the shoulder. I knew that it was a 12 gauge shotgun that she was shot with. And when you see what that does, you figure you don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot of blood. You got to stop the bleeding. I went out to my vehicle and grabbed my trauma kit, and then we used what we could there, and then I believe we went and got more towels from around the house to try to stop the bleeding until EMS showed up. I kind of remember you try to get their name and how old they are and just basic stuff, and more or less it's to let EMS know, so before they get there, they know what they're dealing with. And then it's also just to kind of keep their mind off of everything else that's going on, which, pretty hard to do that, but you're trying to take their mind off of what's actually going on and get them to talk to you. EMS, I believe, took her straight to Mercy Hospital. After we got investigations showed up, and then myself and other deputies were trying to figure out where Craig Finney, who he was a suspect, where he had gone.
Conscious that this case could go in any direction, Detective Freeberg preserves the scene.
At that time, I had told, when Deputy Doty had cleared the house, I had told them to go grab a camera and just start taking pictures of everything, because you want the pictures obviously before everything gets disrupted, because you're going to have, we had 3 officers in there. And then EMS is going to show up, which they have a job to do. They're not thinking of securing a scene. So it's a lot going on.
Crime scene analyst Katie Patty is one of the first to arrive at the scene.
Most of the time, I don't have a ton of information. Usually, it's kind of an unknown. I know there's been a shooting. I don't know if anyone, the severity of injuries. I don't know where our victim might be, if our suspect's in custody. Typically, by the time that I arrive, the officers will have gathered more information. So that would be the first thing I do when I arrive on a scene, is go to the first responding deputy if they're there, and ask them if I can get some more information as to what's happening, where's our victim, where's our suspect, what are the circumstances here. I had been told that we had a female who resided in that residence who had been shot unknown how many times, and that she was being transferred to Nebraska Medical Center in very critical condition. I also knew at that point then that our suspect was no longer on location, and we didn't know where he was at that time. There was a large pool of blood on the floor near the kitchen sink, and there was also a towel that was kind of wrapped up around that blood. It looked like somebody had probably used that to care or render aid to the victim. This particular firearm that was used in this incident was a shotgun, so it's actually shotgun shells that were in the residence. There were some alcohol containers, but a majority of the evidence that we were looking for, again, was that blood and ballistic evidence. Also, in the ceiling, we did see what appeared to be fabric that, in my opinion, had come from a piece of clothing or an article of clothing. So that was also significant in this case. In scenes like that, you have to be very careful not to step on the evidence, to get your other investigators out of there so that it's just you and you can really focus on the small, minute details. And in this particular instance, a lot of the evidence usually it's on the floor, it's on it's on a couch. We actually had a lot of evidence. In this case, it was actually on the ceiling. So that's something that we had to be very cognizant of and document with our, with photos and video and things of that nature. The first thing that I noticed was the shot hole through the bathroom door. And when I saw that, I thought he was trying to kill whoever was inside of that bathroom. And at that time, I didn't know who that was, but I mean, that was pretty evident to me because you go from shooting her to shooting yourself to shooting through the bathroom door. Those trajectories don't line up. It wasn't one shot made all of that damage. So that was probably the one thing that kind of triggered my interest right in the beginning. After seeing the shots in the ceiling and knowing where she was injured, I think that really opened my eyes to wow, there was a lot going on here.
In Pottawatomie County, Iowa, investigators are beginning an investigation into the shooting of Patty Harker, a farm owner shot and seriously wounded in the early hours of June 17, 2011, at Minden, about half an hour northeast of Omaha, Nebraska. Police now have a chief suspect, a man called Craig Finney, who was previously in a relationship with Patty, but Craig Finney is nowhere to be found. Deputy teams spread out. One team visits Craig Finney's home, and his son Cody offers help in finding him.
Myself and other deputies were trying to figure out where Craig Finney, who he was a suspect, where he had gone.
I was initially contacted by an investigator who was with the son of Craig Finney. He apprised me of the situation and told me about the efforts that they were making to locate Mr. Finney. He told me about the different scenes that were involved. At that point, they knew of at least 3. They did not know where Craig Finney was. And he just apprised me of the situation and that they were basically on a manhunt to find him, and they were visiting different places that Cody Finney was assisting them in finding of where his father might be.
Cody is able to give police crucial information regarding Craig's movements straight after the shooting and takes them to his truck.
You could tell from the crime scene that he had gone back outside and had sort of laid in wait outside the window, which would have faced into the house toward the bathroom, and there's blood. He ultimately ends up getting back into his truck, assuming he knows that 911's on the way, or first responders are on the way. Craig's truck was pretty messed up as well. I mean, he was bleeding. It's left shoulder area, and so he's got blood all over his car seat, all over the side of his door, all over the side of his truck, where he'd leaned up against it. And so, I mean, I almost felt like probably the scene of where, Craig drives away was almost more bloody, maybe, than the scene where Patty had been shot. So Craig heads to a pond. There's a friend of his that used to be an employer, and he has a very nice little, sort of rural pond area, and so you could fish and maybe swim, out there. And so he drives out to this pond. It's pretty close to Carson, Oakland area in Pottawatomie County, and calls his son, and so has his son come to pick him up. The phone call to his son was, meet me at the pond. I've shot myself. Don't believe at this time that his son was aware that he'd also shot, Patty. Just knows he shot himself. So, I think the son initially is thinking, what kind of bonehead thing did my dad do? Not thinking crime, more thinking accident, type of situation. And then shows up and sees that Craig is in pretty bad shape. I mean, I think at that point, Craig confesses to him that he shot Patty. And so the son makes the decision that he's going to drive him from the pond that's owned by this friend to the friend's house himself. And this friend, this is somebody Craig used to work for and, I think close friends with over the past maybe 10 years. And Craig was aware that his friend was in the Ozarks. He had a cabin down in the Ozarks. That's about a 5-6 hour drive south from us. And so I think he knew he was gone, there. And so he goes to the farm where he knows his friend he has a Mercury Mountaineer in the shed, knows where he keeps the keys, and convinces his son to go back, says, oh, hey, I need you to get me my clothes or something in the truck. So can you go back to the pond and get some stuff for me? And so his son heads back to the pond. Craig then takes the keys to the Mountaineer and skedaddles out of town and starts heading south himself to the Ozarks.
That's what actually surprised me the most, though, is because when you saw at the scene, when he turned the gun on himself, I honestly don't know how he made it down to Missouri. I mean, when you're talking a 12-gauge shotgun that he shot himself with in the shoulder, and the amount of blood, that we had found in the vehicle and all the different locations. I mean, making it down to Missouri with that type of wound, that's the biggest thing I think that I couldn't believe that he made it down there alive.
Back at Creighton University Medical Center, Patty Harker is in intensive care. She's able to give detectives some vital background information to her relationship with Craig Finney.
She's just, I say, best way I could describe Patty is just, hardworking salt of the earth. She just was tough, beautiful, just sort of a country girl. I think that's the best way, to put it. Worked hard, played hard. Worked, I think, at the time when all this is going on, worked at a place called Cyclone Cattle, which is just a cattle feedlot. I think that's where she met Craig. They'd been together for around 10 years, I think, and had broken up about a month, maybe a few weeks to a month before, this occurred. So Craig had he was sort of a plumber, plumbing business, also had some excavation equipment. Craig had done work at my place. I'd had a house in Carson, and he dug out a hill where we put a retaining wall in back probably in the 90s. As my understanding is that he sort of went out to her place to put in a new septic system. Obviously, when you live in the country, you're not hooked up to city sewer. We get used to, we turn the sink on, we flush our toilets, and it just goes away. That's not what happens when you live in the country. You have to have your own septic system, which stores and treats waste, on site. And, there's a special way that those have to be, installed. So they have to be licensed plumbers and septic system installers to do that. That's my understanding, is that Craig had gone out and done work at her place.
She said it was more of a friendship, but it was an intimate friendship, and she took a lot of responsibility for Craig's well-being and could see Craig as a person in need of a lot of care, and she was a caring person. And she gave a lot of herself to Craig. She focused on him a lot.
They also had a relationship that was pretty tumultuous, to put it lightly. They both, I think, they enjoyed partying, enjoyed hanging out, having fun. Problem was that Craig was very jealous and got violent when he was drinking, and I think that was sort of the history of their relationship as well. Is that maybe a year or two in, he started becoming a little violent with her, shoving her around. At one point, he made a fall. She was at the bar someplace. He was not. He was home. He wanted her to come home. Called her. She refused to come home. And so he called the police and explained that he basically made a false report against her, trying to get her arrested for drunk driving as she's leaving the bar. Just sort of this very possessive, and I've seen this, plenty of times in my career, but sort of this sort of possessive relationship. There's just a difference between obviously being partners and being property, and I think he was taking it more of the, he was very possessive, you were mine, didn't want her talking to other men.
Anytime she had any interaction with another male, he would become extremely jealous. And this was in good times and bad. They did both work at the same place. And so anytime she would even walk by another male employee, he would become upset and be jealous.
It was a violent history. Craig had assaulted Patty on several occasions, a few of which she had called the police concerning. He had actually pled guilty to one incident involving taking her hair and cutting it off, which also resulted in a laceration to her scalp and cutting off the tip of her index finger as she tried to shield her hair from the scissors. And that was in front of her 12-year-old son.
Patty also tells police what happened at the farm.
The first 2 times that we saw her, it was all handwritten. You couldn't understand a word she was saying. Her voice was so incredibly weak. We were just trying to get answers of, where she was earlier that night, if she invited Craig over or not, if she expected him to be coming over and things like that. She said that they had been at a work-related event after work, and she did see Craig there that night, and she gave Ben a ride home because he had been drinking. There was not an intimate relationship with her and Ben. I do remember her saying that, and that's about all that she was able to get out at that point. You know, and as a female, you can't help but sit there and feel for her, knowing that, you know, she could have taken a different route or, you know, what did she do to deserve this?
Crucially, Patty is able to give police an account of the night on the shooting.
She left work and she went to a bar. At that bar was a coworker that she had previously spent time with in the presence of Craig Finney. They had all been friends. It was their habit that whoever had drank the least would give the rides home. And on that night, it was Patty. She knew that the coworker had to work in the morning, so she offered the coworker a ride home. It was already 2 o'clock in the morning. His shift began at like 6 a.m. So the point of him going all the way home was a little pointless. So the plan was that he was going to sleep on the couch. She was going to sleep in her bed, wake up and give him a ride to work the next morning. They had arrived at the house just long enough for the coworker to take his boots off and get a glass of water. Craig Finney showed up at the door. She could clearly see him, and so could Ben, because there was a large 3 by 2 foot window in the door. There were 2 doors, one leading into a small foyer and then one leading into the kitchen. He had already walked through the door to the small foyer. When she saw him coming, she quickly locked the door to the kitchen. She threw her phone to her coworker and told him to lock himself in the bathroom, which he did. And he immediately called 911. Craig then entered the kitchen by forcing his way through that second door. The force through the door was determined both by Patty's version of events, that he forced his way through the door, which she had locked, and by evidence on the door jamb itself, which showed damage and a forceful entry.
My understanding is Patty's just trying to tell him there's nothing going on. Why are you here? Basically, you shouldn't be here. We're done. Nothing's going on between Ben and I. You know, just get out of here. And he's having none of it. And so he goes back out to his truck where he has a double-barreled 12-gauge, shotgun, which is just it just holds 2 shells, one on the left, one on the right. And so he loads it, fills his pockets with shells as well, and then heads back in. My understanding is that he fires the round through the woodwork just to the left of the door where Ben is at. He knows Ben is in the bathroom. Probably saw him going in there. I mean, you can see through the windows and the door. That probably saw him go in, shut the door. So he fires around, sort of at Ben's general direction, then shoots Patty. Then he has to reload because he's only got 2 rounds, right? So he reloads, shoots himself, and I think he was just, this was going to be sort of what we see, right? Murder-suicide, and doesn't get the job done.
Crucially, Patty is able to give police an account of the night of the shooting.
Okay, stay on the line here with me. What are you hearing, sir? What are you hearing?
I don't hear anything right now. I heard 2 gunshots, but nobody's talking anymore.
You can hear, Patty as she's shot. You'll hear her moaning. Then she starts to get quiet. Sort of the eeriest part of this is that Craig was coming back into the the place looking for Ben. I mean, you hear him say, Ben.
He's coming back in. Ben, he's in here now.
Okay, was that Craig that was saying something?
Yes.
Okay.
It's an interesting process now for Ben as you hear the police are on the way. He's trying to talk to the 911 operator and says, basically, get here. They need to hurry up. She's dying. I can't just sit here, and not do anything.
I need the cops here.
I understand that, sir. They're on their way.
I need
The ambulance is on their way.
I need them.
Investigators are also able to collaborate Patty's version of events with the 911 call.
One of the people whose vehicle was taken by Craig, because Craig switched vehicles from the vehicle he used to arrive at Patty's house to the vehicle that he used to leave the state with. That vehicle was eventually reported stolen. The owner of the cabin that he went to down in Missouri was notified. The owner of the vehicle that he had taken was notified. And the owner of that vehicle had a hunch that he might be at that cabin. So he and his daughter went to that cabin They saw the vehicle, and upon seeing the vehicle and knowing slight details about what had occurred, at least that there had been a shooting, that Patty had been shot, they did not approach. They called law enforcement. The Morgan County Sheriff's Department arrived. They set up a SWAT team and a perimeter, and they had intended to tap phone lines because they believed that Craig Finney was still armed and dangerous and homicidal and suicidal, and they did not end up having to deploy any of those tactics because Craig Finney, without knowing that they were there, came out of the residence for whatever reason, and they apprehended him outside without any resistance.
Approximately 29 hours after the shooting of Patty Harker, Craig Finney is arrested and taken into custody. Yet back in Creighton University Medical Center, Patty is growing weaker. Police investigating the shooting of Patty Harker, a farmer shot and seriously wounded in the early hours of June 17, 2011, in Minden, about half an hour northeast of Omaha, have tracked down their prime suspect, Craig Finney. He's been located and arrested by police in Missouri, and they soon come across a series of notes that confesses a motive for the shooting.
Well, the statement that I had made was that Craig Finney believed fully that he was going to die. He knew he was going to die a murderer, but he didn't want to die a liar. So he wrote a note to his children explaining that he loved them and his side of events. He wrote a note to the Council Bluffs Police Department where he said, "I am wanted for the murder of Patty Harker. This is what happened." He explained that he was in a rage at seeing Patty with another man, and that he could not stand seeing her with another man.
He ends up writing like on cocktail napkins and paper towels. He ends up writing pretty lengthy sort of confession about what happened. A note to his kids, notes to law enforcement. If you find my body, here's my name, my address, my birthday, my social security number. I mean, he's sort of doing all the things to sort of get his affairs in order, sort of explain why what happened.
He wrote a third note as to what he wanted done with his ashes to his oldest son, Cody, specifically that he wanted them buried at the pond that he had been at. Apparently that pond was a place of solitude for him. But he did not write a note to Patty's children. He did not write a note to Patty. He did not write a note that expressed sorrow for what he had done. It was more about, and he made this statement, "I will not die like a pig in a cage."
In reading those, it just made me realize what a selfish person that he was. It was about him, his injuries. I'm so injured. He was going to die. He wrote a note to his son. Really was never about Patricia. But I will say in those notes, he thought that she was dead. So he admits to shooting her. But again, he makes it all about him. It was never, "I'm so sorry I did this to her." It was more, poor me, I'm going to die. And the only reason this happened is because, because she was with this other man, and I can't live without her, essentially.
Patty, meanwhile, is in a critical condition in hospital.
Her blood pressure had dropped to 43/33, which is not consistent with life. Because of the low blood pressure, she had suffered a heart attack. Because of the blast effect of having a deer slug put through her back at a distance of 1 to 4 feet, she had percussion damage to all of her internal organs. Her heart had to be stitched back together. Her left lung was completely opaque on an x-ray because it had been shattered to bits. 4 of her ribs were commutated fractures, meaning pieces, and they all had to be removed. Her clavicle had to be removed. And her first surgery was 9.5 hours long, and she nearly died several times.
During his deposition, Craig Finney accepts a plea deal which surprises investigators.
I think when he realized how much he had hurt her, I think when he had to hear from her mouth about all the abuse and the things that she'd gone through, I think for him he was just like, I'm done. I'm just going to just take my medicine and agree to plead guilty to attempted murder. And I mean, that was for us pretty odd because it doesn't get any worse. I mean, you go to trial, it's not like the judge can say, well, now I'm really mad at you and you get extra time. I mean, the sentence is the sentence. And so for him to just plead basically straight up to attempted murder, I think was pretty surprising to us. And like I said, it happened within 2 weeks. He said, he entered a plea, got sentenced exactly that same day, and headed off to the pen.
Craig pleads guilty to attempted murder and on November 29, 2011, is sentenced to 25 years. Shockingly, County DA Christine Serco discovers Craig is corresponding with the woman he attempted to murder, Patty Harker.
He spent a short time in the jail pending the attempted murder prosecution before his parents posted his $100,000 cash-only bond. During that period of time, he reached out to Patty and she responded. I don't know what Patty's reasons were because I did not discover that Patty was having any communication whatsoever with Craig, and her family brought in a stack of letters. And after I discovered that stack of letters, I reached out to the prison and asked them to examine the computer that he had been using and to look in his cell. And that's where it was discovered that he had been communicating with her through a pseudonym all along.
He's whining. He's doing a lot of, I'm poor me. I'm sitting in prison. I've got nothing to do. And she's having none of it, right? I mean, some of her letters are, you don't know what you've put me through. I mean, I'm on oxygen. I've lost a lung. I mean, I used to be able to go out and work. Now I walk with a walker. I'm on oxygen. Basically, like, don't give me your, poor me.
It's kind of strange, but I also think that when you've been in a relationship with someone for that long, it's probably difficult not to have some sort of connection to that person. And I think her knowing that he was behind bars, he couldn't hurt her anymore. So her communicating with him to her was probably innocent.
But Craig Finney is about to challenge the case in the system once again, this time appealing his plea and claiming he is innocent of the attempted murder of Patty Harker. By late 2011, Craig Finney is incarcerated in the Clarinda Correctional Facility, serving a 25-year sentence for the attempted murder of Patty Harker on June 17, 2011. Finney pled guilty. However, now incarcerated, he changes his mind and decides to challenge his guilty plea.
So, if people plead guilty and I close the file and I move on to the next file in my office. That's just, we have a lot of work to do, and my favorite is when somebody pleads guilty as charged, right? And I just move on with life. And within a couple of weeks of him entering his plea and being sentenced, he files an appeal. And he says, well, I think it's like, right, prison's not fun. I think he got off to, Oakdale as the inmate classification center. And I think he felt like, wow, now I'm regretting my decision. And so he files an appeal arguing that there was not a sufficient factual basis for his plea. The judge has to decide not only are you pleading guilty, but are you actually guilty? And so he files an appeal and says that the judge at the district court level did not get sufficient facts from him to prove that he was actually guilty, and therefore they should set his conviction aside. And Court of Appeals agreed, and they reversed his conviction.
The offer that he received was quite generous, although acceptable. It was reasonable, although it was a concession of sorts. So when he changed his mind and decided that he wanted to have a trial, it was like taking a gift and giving it back, and it seemed like another act of selfishness by Craig Finney, because at that point he was willing to put Patty and her family through a trial, which is very difficult. Her deposition was very difficult, but he was willing to make her tell that story again, this time in front of a jury. And he wanted to have that opportunity to vindicate himself and not appear to be a bad person.
But Craig's decision backfires when tragically on April 25th, 2013, Patty Harker dies. An autopsy confirms it is due to the gunshot injuries. On August 12, 2014, prosecutors bring more serious charges against him.
In the end, her body just could not handle it. I mean, she just, getting a lung, blown out. I mean, there's just no way. She already had a compromised, sort of lung system with the, COPD issues she's dealing with, and having the one lung, removed. I mean, she just couldn't keep going.
It was horribly sad. I mean, we kind of thought that, she had made it that many months, that she was in the clear and could maybe live a healthy life and move on. But clearly that didn't happen. Some complications kind of came about that she just couldn't overcome.
The crime of murder is completed when the person dies. I mean, because one of the elements is obviously that you caused the death of the person. And so had Patty died and then we accepted a plea to attempted murder, the crime of murder would already have been complete, and we would not have been able to charge him with murder because he's already entered a plea of guilty to attempted murder. But since he entered his plea and was sentenced on the attempted murder before she died, then the crime of murder still hasn't truly been completed yet. And so once she dies then, about a week or two, I believe, before the Supreme Court's decision reinstating his conviction came back. But since he had entered that plea and been sentenced before she died, then double jeopardy did not apply, and we felt comfortable going forward.
But we charged this as a first-degree murder case because we did believe that he intended to kill Patty that night, because he knew that their relationship was over, and quite frankly, he had nothing to lose.
In August 2015, Craig Finney's trial for the first-degree murder of Patty Harker begins, and he decides to take the stand and give his version of events.
When he took the stand, some of his testimony was quite surprising. I knew that he was going to advance his version of events, that it was all just an accident, and the only reason he had a gun in the first place was just to convey his anger and seriousness of purpose. It was a scare tactic. He never intended to actually fire that gun.
The prosecution presents evidence proving Patty died as a result of being shot, and that Craig intended to cause fatal injury.
We really had to make sure that we could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the gunshot...
Nhưng mấy cái lập ra cái app bi các thứ này bựa này, nó lập ra giờ nó cứ ngồi không ăn tiền, sướng thật. Tiền cứ đổ ào liên tục, ăn gần như là 50% như thế. Bao nhiêu đơn? 100 thằng cảnh. Đấy là mình nghèo, mình đặt đơn bé ấy, chứ còn những người giàu mấy trăm người ta chẳng nghĩ. Đã thật.
Cái đầu rất quan trọng mà.
Chị ra cứ bảo bọn mình mất mát.
Gì? Chị bình thường lắm hả? Chị đấy cứ cẩn thận.
Tại vì trò này cứ bật quạt. Chị bảo thương lắm, chị bật quạt. Các bảo phòng chị bên trong mát hơn mà.
Phòng em nè, sáng ra ánh mặt trời
nó chiếu vào ấy thì nóng hắt vào. Lạnh thì nó cũng lạnh hơn.
Phòng chị đấy chắc gì đã thấy ánh mặt trời.
Có, mở cửa sổ ra.
Đầu
Kéo
bên
theo
kia.
bên- À phòng này kéo rèm.
Hướng này hướng mặt trời lên. Xuống thì nhiều nhà nó cũng khuất mà.
Phòng chị đấy gần sân mà thấy được mặt trời.
Ừ.
Em chưa ở rồi. Làm gì được mặt trời là được. Ánh sáng thì vẫn thấy thôi, chứ mặt trời cũng không. Nhưng mà cái đấy chị Hạnh chị lắp rèm cho ấy. Thế là nhìn được tờ impact ấy. Trông cũng chill chill. Lúc nào mà kéo rèm lên nhìn được cái tờ đối diện. Cũng chill lắm.
Đã ha.
Mình mà không tháo bên này ra cũng nhìn được ấy. Tháo ra như nào? Cửa sổ bên này này.
Chết luôn.
Cái dáng này. Nhìn thẳng vào tờ impact luôn. Phòng mình bắt cho giữa phòng con kia. 5 triệu mấy chưa tính dịch vụ.
Không biết là được ra ngoài lọ. Mình đã tô xong rồi nha, mình sẽ cho các bạn xem cái bức tranh hình quả lê của mình này. Các bạn có thấy hai quả lê của mình tô rất là đẹp không? Ok, vậy là mình vừa mới hướng dẫn các bạn vẽ và tô màu bức tranh hình hai quả lê này rồi nha. Thì video của mình đến đây cũng đã kết thúc rồi. Xin chào tạm biệt và hẹn gặp lại các bạn ở những video tiếp theo. Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn. Hôm nay mình sẽ hướng dẫn cho các bạn cách tô màu một bức tranh hình một bé gái đang ngủ này nha. Ở đây thì mình đã chuẩn bị sẵn một bức tranh có hình một em bé gái này đang ngủ. Trông rất là ấm áp đúng không? Thì mình sẽ hướng dẫn cho các bạn cách tô màu bức tranh này. Ở phía bên trên này thì người ta đã tô mẫu cho mình bằng những cái màu sắc rất là đẹp rồi này. Thì mình sẽ tô theo cái bức tranh ở phía bên trên này. Và để tô màu thì mình cần sử dụng ở đây là một hộp màu sáp gồm 24 màu. Hộp màu của mình thì hơi gãy một chút nhưng mà vẫn có thể tô được nha. Các bạn cũng có thể thay thế các loại màu khác như là màu dầu hoặc là màu chì, thì thành quả ra vẫn sẽ tương tự như vậy nhé. Bây giờ mình sẽ bắt đầu tô từ những cái chi tiết nhỏ trước. Đầu tiên mình sẽ sử dụng màu vàng. Ở đây trong bức tranh thì có vầng trăng này, các ngôi sao ở trên chăn, bông hoa ở trên tóc, phần gối ga giường sẽ có màu vàng. Bây giờ mình sẽ bắt đầu sử dụng màu vàng để tô cái bức tranh này trước nha. Đầu tiên mình sẽ tô cái vầng trăng ở phía sau em bé này.